also home to the hub, where the water merchants are responsible for the introduction of bottle caps as currency, backing it with water, a scarce commodity in the post-war America. The Brotherhood of Steel originated in California as well, when their founder, Roger Maxson, a former U.S. Army captain, took over Los Hills shortly after the Great War, and declared that the United States has failed to protect its citizens and serve their needs during the years leading up to the war, and stated that they must form a new order to preserve civilization, a Brotherhood of Steel. Sadly, California is also home to one of the most highly irradiated locations in the Fallout universe, the Globe, a former Westech research facility destroyed by direct nuclear strikes, and the Divide, an area near the Nevada border torn apart by quakes, radioactive storms, and monstrous dust storms that could skin you alive, caused by the pre-war US warheads detonating in the underground silos there, making the area unlivable. Arizona. According to Raul Tejada in Fallout New Vegas, after the Great War, Arizona was largely fragmented and lawless, infested with raiders and violent gangs.
People around here tend to see them as invading marauders planning to burn and pillage the countryside. But
I'm gonna have to get me a Fallout novel.
Before the Legion, it was a nasty place.
How many novels in the Fallout series? Ooh. Unique landscape and settlements in Fallout. How many Fallout novels are there? Ugh. Huh. How many pages is that shite? 200 pages, not too bad. Not too bad. Get the fuck over there, faggot.
Something with raiders, you couldn't trade with a town 2 miles up the road.
In Van Buren, the Brotherhood has a hidden bunker in the state, built by Senator Todd Peterson in 2067 to house himself and his family should a war break out. Unfortunately for him, the war caught him unaware, and the bunker was never actually used for its intended purpose, until some years later, when Roger Maxson and his newly founded Brotherhood claimed it for themselves. There's also a location called the Bloomsfield Space Center, an old Air Force base, littered with the rusting carcasses of numerous air vehicles. Living there is a gang called the Rusty Hooks, led by Kyle the Hook. Arizona is where Caesar took control of his first tribe, the Blackfoots, and created his Caesar's Legion in 2247. He continued to conquer tribes from southwestern Utah, southwestern Colorado, the western edge of New Mexico, for 75 years before the Legion arrived.
Getting there, boss. I've been in Tucson. The locals can call it Tucson all they want, but it's Tucson, damn it. About 75 years when she showed up. This was a long time ago, before Caesar's Legion pacified Arizona and brought the raider tribes to heel.
He would claim that since the Legion took over Arizona, things have been a lot more peaceful there, something also echoed by Dale Barton, a trader from Arizona found in the fort.
Hell, I don't even need to travel with guards most of the time in Legion territory. All the bandits are dead or run off.
Phoenix still exists, but its condition and whether it got hit by nukes is unknown. Joshua Graham mentions the city
it's like
and
no more
compares it with New
coal.
Vegas and the Boneyard, saying it is a place of metal and stone. New Mexico. In Van Buren, a Gould town called the Reservation would have been found built in the remains of Los Alamos nuclear testing facility in the Rocky Hills of northern New Mexico, led by a deranged and paranoid ghoul named Dr. William Clark. His objective is to use the nuclear facility to develop new nuclear bombs and to complete the process of turning the Earth into his promised Earth. The area surrounding the reservation is highly radioactive. Just like with Arizona, the Legion seems to have occupied most of New Mexico, confirmed by Siri and Dale Barton.
A small town in New Mexico. The Legion burned it a few years back. That's how I ended up here.
Not much else is known about the state. Texas. If we were to believe the lore of Fallout Brotherhood of Steel, there's a lot going on in Texas. After the defeat of the Master's army in Fallout 1, a super mutant named Addis gathered some of the remaining mutants and fled to Texas. There they would continue to search for ways to make the Master's plan a reality and try to cure their sterility problem. This would not go unnoticed by the Brotherhood, and specifically by head paladin Rhombus, who would personally lead an expedition to Texas and arrive there in 2208. There they would occupy an abandoned prototype vault and make it their base of operations. Later on, the Texas Brotherhood would also expand into Fort Worth and the town of Alamo. The state has multiple established settlements, like Carbon, a small community of agricultural and Brahmin farmers, plus a ghoul city bordering a mountainous region in West Texas, and the location of a hidden corporate vault, Lubbock, another small town shared by both ghouls and humans, and a trading center called Lone Star, built on what used to be known as Abilene before the Great War. The medical malpractice pistol in Fallout 76 was manufactured by a pre-war company called Red Eagle Firearms that was located in Austin, Texas. The city of Austin seems to have survived the war, but now is infested with super mutants and mutated plant life. According to Tex Rogers' holotape titled Message to Marge, he was trying to get back home to Texas before joining up with the Brotherhood of Steel.
I made it maybe 400 miles since the bombs. At this rate, Texas might as well be a million miles further. I need a unit, a place to belong. I feel like the Brotherhood may be it.
Oklahoma. A rejection letter from Vault-Tec in Fallout 3 informs a resident in Springvale that they may apply to vaults in other areas, like Oklahoma and newly annexed Canada, revealing the existence of at least one vault in the state. Chief Hanlon mentions that Red Okie Centuria have been called into Mojave recently, which might be a reference to Oklahoma as well, as the name Okie often refers to people from Oklahoma, and the dirt in the state appears red, caused by the large amount of iron in the soil, thus Red Okie. It seems that Caesar's Legion has at one point been in the area. Louisiana. The only mention of Louisiana is by Initiate Ellison of the Brotherhood of Steel, encountered in Fallout 76, who is originally from there.
I was born in Louisiana, but I hardly remember it. We moved to West Virginia when I was really young. Me, my mom, and my brother.
Arkansas. There are no mentions or information about Arkansas. Mississippi. General Brock's terminal in Fort Strong in Fallout 4 mentions launchers being sent ahead to a supply yard in Mississippi, and a terminal in the parlor in the Nuka World DLC describes a pre-war fictional story of a girl from a small town in Mississippi. Tennessee. In the Ladies Auxiliary Tape 8, one of the members mentions mugs that are in stock at a corner store made in the state.
No, not that. I mean, didn't somebody get mugged or something up the way? Oh, yeah, right. Ernest did just get a whole lot of new mugs place made in Tennessee, I think.
Tennessee is also mentioned in the Observations Volume 27 paper note in Fallout 76. It's quite disappointing that there's not much more information available about the state, since in the real world is where the secret Manhattan Project took place to develop the atomic bomb. Alabama. Alabama is not mentioned anywhere. Moving on to Georgia. In Fallout 76, Jenny Brown, the leader of the villagers at the retreat, compares Appalachia's humidity to that of what she experienced in Georgia.
This place ain't quite Georgia, but the humidity's sure trying.
In Fallout 4, the state is also mentioned by a factory foreman who began his military career in Georgia, and on a Matt Murdock baseball card that states his hometown was Atlanta, Georgia. Florida. According to the lore of Fallout Tactics, the Midwest Brotherhood of Steel has established themselves in Florida and are battling the Mutant Liberation Army. Because of an irradiated gek that had been activated years prior, the whole area is infested with deadly mutant plants and fungi that prey on animals and humans. There are even mutated crocodiles scouring the swamps for their next meal. In Fallout 76, the Blue Ridge Caravan Company's bartender, Herschel Blind, states that Paladin Romani, the leader of the Brotherhood's first expeditionary force in Appalachia, was spotted in Florida performing a trapeze act.
One of my regulars said that he saw that Paladin Romani lady doing a trapeze act down in Florida. True story.
South Carolina and North Carolina. Not much is known about either of these states, other than the MRIs found in Fallout New Vegas' DLC, Lonesome Road, were manufactured in Mullins, South Carolina, and the health dispensers found in the Anchorage Reclamation Simulation in the Operation Anchorage DLC were made by a pre-war company named Lee Rapid Pharmaceuticals, based in Charlotte, North Carolina. In the Museum of Technology in Fallout 3, the placard in front of the Wright Flyer 1 also mentions Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, as the location of the debut flight of the Wright Flyer 1, created by Orville and Wilbur Wright. Virginia. A lot of the towns and settlements in Fallout 3 are located in Virginia, from Andale and Fort Independence to Tennessee Tower and Little Lamplight. Jack Smith will state that Commonwealth of Virginia lives on in Andale if you tell him that Virginia has been gone for 200 years.
Not here, not in Andale, no sir. The great Commonwealth of Virginia is alive and well. In fact, we just voted ourselves a new governor.
Lacey and Isella are also from Virginia and describe it as a difficult place to live.
We both came over from Virginia. Well, what was Virginia? There's a lot more hot zones that way. With a few spots that are livable, well, they got picked clean fast. I mean, Appalachia's dangerous, really dangerous. But it's better than where we've been.
The unique Naughty Nightwear pajamas were especially made in Virginia by a tailor for Lugnut. The Brotherhood is present in the state as well. Obviously, Washington, D.C., bordering Virginia and Maryland, is the setting for Fallout 3. After multiple nuclear strikes during the Great War, the city remains in ruins, overrun by super mutants and raiders. Fighting them are the Lions Brotherhood of Steel, better known as the East Coast Brotherhood, headquartered at the former Pentagon building. Many landmarks can still be visited in the city, and thanks to the actions of the Lone Wanderer, the water purifier inside the Jefferson Memorial is providing clean water for the whole capital wasteland. Maryland. Locations like Canterbury Commons, Republic of Dave, Oasis, and Paradise Falls are all found in Maryland. The free radicals in Appalachia originate. Paradise Falls are all found in Maryland. The free radicals in Appalachia originated from the Western Maryland Correctional Facility. The Point Lookout DLC takes place in the Point Lookout State Park in Maryland. Although never directly hit by any nukes, the water of Point Lookout's bogs was still contaminated by the river that flows out of the capital wasteland, exposing the locals there to radiation and throughout the years turning them into the swamp folk. Desmond Lockhart encountered there will mention how his old rival's family owned half of Maryland. Back when there was a Maryland to own. Adams Air Force Base is also located in Maryland. West Virginia. Spared from most of the destruction and carnage of the Great War, due to its relative isolation and lack of strategic targets, the environment there was still affected by radioactive fallout from other areas of the former United States, which ended up mutating much of the local wildlife. Unchecked coal mine fires have blanketed an area centered around Mount Blair in Ash, and factories and industrial sites around the town of Clarksburg polluted that area, cloaking it in a white powder. Much of the surviving human population after the war perished over the following years due to the scorched plague, caused by a hazardous mutagenic plague indigenous to the vast caverns beneath Appalachia, spread by scorch beasts, periodically breaching the surface and terrorizing the countryside. Despite its problems, West Virginia is being resettled by wastelanders, coming from other bordering states like Pennsylvania and Maryland, as well as raiders and the Brotherhood of Steel. There are at least 6 known vaults in the state. Charleston, the capital city of West Virginia, escaped nuclear devastation and remained intact until 2082, when David Thorpe, the leader of a raider gang, used a mini-nuke to destroy the Summersville Dam, causing catastrophic damage to the city.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Will state that Pennsylvania was hit by a nuclear weapon.
We do have coming in. That's, confirmed reports. I repeat, confirmed reports of nuclear detonations in New York and Pennsylvania.
In Abraham Washington's terminal, he writes that he had met someone who claimed to have a piece of Liberty Bell from Philadelphia. He had then decided to fund an expedition to that quote-unquote dump. In his words, in hopes of having the entire bell brought back. Yasmin Chowdhury, a traveling chef in Fallout 76, is from Philadelphia. She claims to have spent her whole life there.
I was born in Philadelphia, spent my whole life there until culinary school. After graduating, I went back to Philly to be near my family while I started making a name for myself as a chef. My dream was to open my own restaurant.
Pennsylvania's second largest city, Pittsburgh, is known as the Pit, a raider-dominated slave city. It was established in the aftermath of the Great War by local gangs. In the year 2255, they were all nearly wiped out by the Brotherhood of Steel, passing through the area on their way to the capital wasteland, only to be revitalized by a former Brotherhood initiate, Ishmael Asher, and his recently formed army of raiders. By 2277, the city's slave trade and steel industry had made it a major power on the East Coast. As a major industrial center for steel production, Pittsburgh was a priority target for the Chinese warheads. The warheads that landed near the metropolis would dramatically alter the environment around the city. The radioactive fallout from the warheads mixed with the heavy industrial pollution from the steel mills created a hazardous environment unique to the area, slowly poisoning anyone living there. Everett, the mill foreman in the Pit DLC, also mentions a town called Monroeville, still existing outside Pittsburgh. Enclave's main base of operations on the East Coast, Raven Rock, is located in the mountains of
Raven Rock, Virginia. That's on a Ubisoft game.
Has no mentions in the Fallout universe.
Future Soldier. Ghost Recon Future Soldier.
The only known surviving city in the state is Atlantic City. Spared by a direct nuclear strike, it still suffered severe flooding in the wake of nuclear detonations elsewhere, with floodwaters rushing into the city at high speeds, destroying everything in their path. The devastation was significant, further worsened by shipping vessels smashed by the waves into the coastal region of the city. When the waters settled, they reached up to as far as the second floor, particularly in the ruined city center. Despite that, the rest of the city deeper inland was spared and remained dry. By the time of the Atlantic City expansion in Fallout 76, the city has a functioning government and is relatively wealthy, thanks to the entertainment industry, gambling, and chems. The only major threat to the residents there is the sudden increase in the number of overgrown and ambulatory horribly mutated flora coming from the pine barrens near the city. In Fallout New Vegas, if you have the Wild Wasteland trip, a New Jersey license plate can be found in the Big Empty on an abandoned military truck cut in half. New York State. There's not much known about the state, other than New York City received a direct nuclear strike from the Chinese, as reported by a civil
you fucker.
Still broadcasting in Fallout 4.
What was that?
Saturday, October 23rd.
Fuck.
Authorities detected that a nuclear attack
Uh-huh.
Mm. This one's gonna be pretty good, I guess. Mm. Oh, yeah, that's right.
Bears that are made drug functionings. Camelot in Vegas and Joplin Wild Wasteland, a New Jersey license.
Ah, you fuckers. Hold on a second.
Hello folks, this is Pastor Mike Hunter coming to you from Watson Studios with another Watson video broadcast. Last time we were together on this subject, you remember I showed you some videos, pretty creepy videos, of what I believe were some type of familiar spirit, unclean spirit, evil spirit, devils, poltergeist, ghosts, haunts, boogers. Yeah, people down south, they call them boogers. But anyway, I showed you some videos of that, and they were pretty creepy. I have to tell you. Seems to be an association between those pale-faced spirits, devils, and death. All right.
Ready to make a White Castle slider? White Castle actually still today uses...
Maybe, and I got a few pictures as well, photographs. We were together on this subject. If you remember, I showed you some videos, pretty creepy videos, of what I believe were some type of familiar spirit, unclean spirit, evil spirit, devils, poltergeist, ghosts, haunts, boogers. Yeah, people down south, they call them boogers. But anyway, I showed you some videos of that, and they were pretty creepy, I have to tell you. Seems to be an association between those pale-faced spirits, devils, and death, all right? Well, we're going to take it up a notch. I've got a couple of videos that they were put together like they were part of the same video, but there's differences in the creature that you're about to see. And I'm going to give you the same warning as I did the last time. I'm going to show some videos, and I got a few pictures as well, photographs. Viewer discretion is definitely advised before you let your children see it, before you let your wife see it, but some of you before you let your husband see it. Anyway, this creature here freaks me out. Take a look at the first video that I'm going to show you. You see some kind of creature walking from left to right on the screen. It takes a while for your mind to really understand what's happening here. but this is a video of a humanoid.
I'm amazed at some of the idiots that watch this.
Let's say it's a spirit, just for argument's sake. It is bent completely over backwards, and it's walking with its head pointed downward, walking on its feet and its hands. Now, it took me a while to figure out what I was looking at, because I can tell you, I've seen, a few people, mainly, like teenage girls, very limber, they're coming out of childhood, and they can bend over backwards and stand basically.
I'm gonna tell them like it is.
With feet on the ground and hands on the ground, hair hanging down, head upside down, all right? I've never seen anybody, whether it was, somebody right in front of me, or Cirque du Soleil, or P.T. Barnum, I've never seen anybody walk bent completely over backwards, head hanging straight down, pointed straight down to the ground, hair dragging the ground, and then walking any kind of distance whatsoever. I have never seen that. I don't think that it's possible. I don't think it's possible. Now that's one clip. I'm going to show you the clip that was attached to it. Somebody figured that maybe they were watching one and the same thing, but what you'll see is this next one here. Whether it's a male or female spirit, there's no way to tell, but it has pants on. This one does. The previous one, go back and look at it just for a second. You can tell it's sort of wearing a skirt or a dress or a kilt. But now this one is really going to freak you out. Again, viewer discretion. We're going to see the same type of motion, the same stance, as it were. Some kind of creature that has the pale face, dark eyes, dark lips, dark black, long black hair, doing what I call the night crawl. Take a look. You can see it coming out of the shadows. And somebody sped the video up. I understand that because it takes a while, but I want you to look at the length at which this creature has to walk. And it just, when you really start seeing the face, and the eyes, and the hair, and the fact that whatever this creature is can walk any sort of distance whatsoever, seemingly with very little effort. Again, you know, I've seen people bend over backwards like that. I've never seen anybody walk that way. This definitely, it puts it in the category of supernatural. And if I go with the precise definition of that, super means beyond and above. Natural means the natural state of things. The way bunnies hop, the way kangaroos jump, the way men walk, and women, the way spiders crawl. We all recognize how they do their things, and when we see them do it, we believe that it's natural because that's what they do. However, this goes beyond natural. It is not, I don't know of any creature in the earth that turns around upside down and reverses itself and walks that way. I don't know of any creature that can do that. So I believe that definitely we're dealing with something above and beyond what is natural. And then if I apply the rest of the meaning to the word supernatural, we're dealing with something that is beyond human, beyond what nature, what God has created in this world to be natural. It goes well beyond that into the, I would have to say, into the spiritual realm. We find the spiritual realm listed for us by category in Ephesians chapter 6. Ephesians chapter 6 has been probably one of the passages that I've studied. Man, I don't know how many different videos, different teachings, doctrines are based right here on this one verse, and what Paul told us was, this is what we're really fighting in this world today. We're fighting against spirits, not flesh and blood. This is not a human war. This is a war against spirits. And as such, when you fight spirits, you can't fight bullets and bayonets and bombs and things like that. You can't do it. Our weapons of warfare are not carnal, the Bible says. They're spiritual. So, spiritual war means we use spiritual weapons. Number one weapon being the Word of God. Number two weapon would be the bended knee, praying to God, asking God for help, asking God to protect you, to watch over you, asking God to send angels on your behalf to help you fight. And I believe in that. 100% I believe in that, and I believe it's talked about in Scripture. But let's read Ephesians chapter 6 and look at these categories that pretty much all, I would say all, evil spirits, familiar spirits, unclean spirits, devils, gods, you name it, ghosts, anything like that. These are the categories that they belong in. Ephesians 6 verse 12, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, on it, in high places. And I would say that probably a lot of what we've seen so far would be spiritual wickedness. There's no doubt in my mind. When you look at some of the devils that we have seen, like I mentioned, the pale-faced one, that just looks wicked. It looks evil. And again, I want to say this. When I see spirits like this, assuming that the videos that we've seen are not manufactured videos, that they're real, and I believe that, you know, there's always going to be some fakes out there. That's the nature of things. People think they can fake videos and get more likes on whatever platform they're on. I couldn't care less about how many likes or dislikes are on my channel or how we present ourselves. The only thing I'm concerned with is sticking right to the Word of God. And some people just don't like that. So anyway, but there's no doubt in my mind that the videos, the one we just saw today, ones we saw in previous two videos dealing with this subject, that they would fall probably under the category of spiritual wickedness. They just look wicked, and I do believe that it's possible that there is a connection between those who, and I started seeing this in the 90s, and maybe I'm a little bit behind, I probably am, but I started seeing a lot of this in the early 90s, mid-90s. We had a young lady that went to our Christian school back in those days, and just very sweet young lady, and she dropped out of our school, went to public school. She came back to visit, and her parents were thinking about putting her back into our school because she had changed. Oh yeah, she changed. She was like this big, long, black, baggy pants, black eyebrows, black eyeshadow, black fingernails, black leather boots, black shirt with, I don't remember what was on it, black hair, and she used to have sort of a light brown hair. And I'm just like, what in the world? I mean, I've seen people fall for fads, but to go after something like that, and then you realize that she has associated herself with what was called then death metal. It's a style of rock and roll music. It's very macabre, very, very wicked, and it's always geared toward death and devils and demons and shadows and evil and, you know, things like that. And that's what I believe the spirit that is involved in turning young people, even some adults, over to want to dress like that, to want to look like that, to be part of that style. I believe that the spirits that we're seeing in these videos
Spoons downstairs.
are
Can't
spirits
afford
that
those.
are influencing
Can't
these
afford to
young
give us
people.
those.
And do spirits influence people? Absolutely. The devil was a spirit in the form of a serpent when he went to Eve in the Garden of Eden. And he spoke his words to her, never one time telling her that she needs to eat fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. He never, ever said you need to eat that. All he did was tell her that God lied, that you shall not surely die. God doth know that in the day you eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods. And so he never once told her, you have to eat this. Her lust just took over, and that's exactly what she did. But he was the spirit having influence over a human being, and that's how it works. The devil is a deceiver. He is called the tempter in the Bible. And so I believe that when you see things like that are displayed in the physical realm, in the human world, there is a spirit that is behind it all. And it doesn't matter if it's death metal and everybody's wearing black, or if it's the way that rap music, whether sung by white people or black people, it doesn't matter. that rap music going out there with themes of absolute anarchy, which means no government whatsoever can rule over us. Hatred toward police officers, judges, those who are in authority. The Bible warns us about that. Saying some of the most vulgar things about women and about the marital act that I never believed in my lifetime I'd ever hear coming out of musicians. I mean, you know, I grew up in the 70s and it was very subliminal how they talked about the things that husbands and wives do. But now it's blatant, it's open, it's basically pornography set to music. And I believe that there are spirits. Those spirits would definitely fall under the category of spiritual wickedness. Let's go back to reading this verse. We wrestle against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world. That could be another possibility. Against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore, take unto you the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. Now, I believe the Bible's telling us one of two things. Number one, an evil day comes when we are attacked by these spirits. That is an evil day. And I've had, to be honest with you, I've had my share of being attacked by evil spirits. And I don't like it. But God allows it for a reason. What do you think God's trying to do? Like David said, he's teaching my hands to know warfare, and he's teaching my fingers to fight. David was skilled with the sling, and when Saul presented all of his armor and all of his weaponry to David, David said, I've never tried any of that stuff. I'll just stick with what I know. Sling, bam. Goliath down on the ground, he went and cut his head off. All right?
That quick, too.
So I believe that God definitely has helped me and taught me how to stand in an evil day when other people have fallen. But then I believe that there is coming a great, big, gigantic, evil day. And I believe that God's saints will withstand in that day because God will have made sure that we are spiritually prepared. Not physically, spiritually prepared. We will have our breastplate of righteousness, our helmet of salvation, the shield of faith, and so on. We will have those things, and we will be ready. I believe God will make sure of it. And he's testing us now, not to show him how we're going to turn out. We already know. He's testing us to show us where we are. And whenever I go through something, and it's a pretty bad ordeal, and sometimes it may not come out as good, I say, God, why did that happen? And I know the answer. God is saying, next time, Mike, you'll do better. And I cry and say, amen, God, amen. All right, now, let me take you to one particular event. I mentioned this in I think, one of the other videos. I know I brought this up before in recent videos where I've been talking about ghosts and poltergeist situations and so on. And that is, this one became famous. In fact, I didn't know this until today. I was doing just a little bit more research on what was called the Amityville Horror. This took place in a little township called Amityville, New York. And here's what's funny about it. Well, funny, but strange about it. Amityville, the word amity comes from the Latin word or the Greek word amor, which is the word for love. Okay? And so, I think it's Latin. But anyway, in Spanish, you say amor. In French, you say amor. Anyway, that's what amity means. It's like a town of friendship. Well, here they are in Amityville, New York, and this family, the Lutz family, is running out of the front door screaming screaming bloody murder, getting out of that house because of all the things that had happened there. And just briefly, and I didn't know this, I mentioned this a while ago, there has been 34, at least 34 motion pictures, movies, made based upon this event that took place somewhere around 1975, 1976, somewhere around in there. An author got a hold of the story, and he listened to about 45 hours of the Lutz family tell their story, tell the details of what happened. But it all goes back to, in 1974, a young man by the name of Ronald DeFeo, for no reason at all.
We need black or gray wall.
That was in the family house. He is about, I think he's like 23, 24 at the time, something like that. He systematically goes from room to room and he kills everybody living in his house. He shot and killed his own parents, shot them twice. All of the bodies were found with their laying face down. Then he killed his 18-year-old sister, his 13-year-old sister, I think, 12-year-old sibling, and the youngest was 9 years old. Killed all 4 of his siblings, killed his parents. The next day, he shows up at a bar that he comes in and he says to one of the patrons in here that knows him, I think my family's dead. Weird, out of his mind. They go to his house, sure enough, call the police. They arrested Ronald DeFeo. That night, they arrested him, charged him with murder, found him guilty. I found out he died in prison in 2021.
Wow.
So, and never did. He never, according to him, never remembered killing anybody. Much less his own family. Didn't seem to be a whole lot of reason for him to kill his family. He just killed his family. You can say, well, maybe he's mad at his dad for not giving him drug money. Okay, I can go along with that one. But why kill your little brother? 9 years old. Why kill him? But he just did. He just went and killed every member of his family. And I think it's very, very possible with his drug abuse, maybe whatever else was going on in his life, I think that a devil used him. What Jesus said about Satan? He's a murderer. And he was from the beginning. He's also a thief. But he is a murderer. The devil kills people or has people killed. Remember the instruction that God gave to Satan concerning Job. You can touch his body. You cannot kill him. Meaning that the devil has the power to take human life if he is allowed to do it. And in this case, the devil never even had to get his hand blessed. He just went into and took over the oldest son of this family, killed every one of them in that house. Now, the house goes up for sale. They can't sell it at market price. And this is the 80s or the 70s, okay? So the house in that market back in the 70s would have been worth probably $150,000, $175,000, maybe $200,000. No way was anybody going to buy it until the Lutz family came along. And they bought the house somewhere around $80,000. They thought they had got the deal of the century. They put everything in that house and they began to live there. Immediately they started noticing some very
strange,
weird, I don't know how else to describe it, but events were happening in that house. At one point, Mr. Lutz, I think it's George Lutz, he was a non-practicing Methodist. His wife was a non-practicing Catholic. And they wanted a Catholic priest to come over and bless the house. That you do this in front of a wall walls blessed. That's, I don't know. But anyway, Catholic priest comes over. He's got holy water. Something about the water and the Pope doing this over the water, and now the water's holy. Hey, okay? But anyway, a priest comes over. He does this thing. He goes into the bedroom, what used to be the bedroom, where Theo's parents were murdered. He goes in that room. Temperature's like 30 degrees inside there. He's freezing to death. It's cold outside, but it ain't that cold. He tries to bless this room, sprinkle holy water. He noticed there are flies everywhere in this room. Kathy Lutz, the wife, was going to turn this into a sewing room. Okay? And when I think of the flies being in that room, I've heard this before about people thinking that certain rooms in their house have a spiritual presence or certain locations, and there's all these flies flying around everywhere. And it reminded me who Baal was. The name Baal from the Old Testament means Lord of the Flies. What was one of the curses that God poured out to Egypt? One of the plagues that God poured out to Egypt, plague of flies. And Baal's name means Lord of the Flies. So in this one room, flies everywhere. By this time, George Lutz, every time he's in the house, he is freezing to death, no matter what room he's in. They were building fires in the fireplace. He would be sitting there next to the fire, multiple blankets covering him up. He could not get warmth from any place in that house. But anyway, the priest is in that sewing room, and there's flies everywhere. And as he's trying to, quote unquote, bless the room, he hears in a very deep, dark growl, "Get out!" So he walks out and he tells Kathy Lutz, "Keep the kids out of that sewing room. Stay out of that room." No explanation, nothing, and he leaves. 28 days after the Lutz family moved in, here they come out the front door in the middle of the night, screaming bloody murder. They got into their station wagon, they drove off, and they never set foot in. They left all of their earthly belongings, they left their furniture, they left everything in that house, and they refused to go back. Not even for nothing. Their cigarettes, they were both heavy smokers. Not after their furniture, not after their clothes, nothing. Subsequent families have moved into that house and have never had a problem.
I'm gonna have to go with the dark gray though.
What do you think? What gives with that? Something I found out about George and Kathy Lutz both is that prior to this event happening in their lives, they both were people who learned the art of Eastern Hindu meditation. What I mean by that is what used to be called back in the 70s transcendental meditation. They were doing the same thing that Whitley Strieber, who wrote the book Communion, about how aliens were coming down and taking him out of his cabin and taking him up to the ship and doing all kinds of awful things to him. Whitley Strieber was someone who meditated every day. When you meditate in that way, you don't fill your mind with thoughts. You empty your mind of everything. God built into us this amazing brain and its consciousness. That means I am physically aware of everything going on around me. The lights are on, my hands are moving, I'm talking to the camera, and so on and so on. But when you meditate according to the Eastern meditation guidelines, you empty your mind of everything. And thus, what you do is God put a brick firewall in your brain to protect your consciousness. Once you remove every thought, everything out of your mind, and it becomes this void, that's when spirit moves in, or multiple ones. You basically open the door and let them in. So the Lutzes were basically they didn't know this at the time, but they were in contact with familiar spirits. I don't know what voices they were hearing. I don't know what they were getting out of it. I just know that what they were doing was getting in contact with familiar spirits, which turned out for them to be evil spirits. Now, I have to say this. I've used this picture before. In fact, I showed it last week. Here is a picture of John DeFeo. He's the 9-year-old little brother to Ronnie DeFeo. There are striking similarities between this picture of little John DeFeo and the spirit that was captured on camera. Now let me tell you a little bit about how that picture was taken. If you've seen or if you've heard of the Conjuring movie series, subsequently you have the Annabelle series. You're looking at the life story and the research and the work of Ed and Lorraine Warren. Now, I don't know how they got into being Ghostbusters, but during their lifetime, they were involved in, I'm going to say, hundreds, if not over 1,000, different house hauntings.
Okay, so we need a lot more trees.
Hauntings,
Well, we need
spirits, what they would refer to as demon possession cases, situations where in the Annabelle, the whole Annabelle series is about, I think, a Raggedy Ann doll. And the thing apparently has a devil attached to it. Anybody who's got that doll, you say, Pastor, do you believe in all those things? Well, let me tell you yes, and I will show you why I believe what I believe. Is it possible for spirits to dwell inside of a house? Are there such things as haunted houses? Can things like dolls and things like that, can they be possessed by a spirit of some kind? Can it, here we go. Can an inanimate object suddenly change form into a animate object? Inanimate means not moving, not alive. Animated means it's alive and moving. Can that happen? And before you say no, I'm going to remind you of what happened in the book of Exodus when Aaron took Moses' rod, cast it to the ground, and the rod became a serpent. Hold on. That's what God did. But what happened right after that? The Bible says that Pharaoh's magicians used enchantments. Enchantment is one of the things, of 9 things in Deuteronomy 18 that
You
God
fucking
told
idiots, I
Israelites,
didn't want to do that. Gosh damn it.
don't be enchanters. Don't go after those who have familiar spirits. Don't go after wizards. Don't practice witchcraft. Enchantments was one of them. And these magicians of Pharaoh had their rods. They gave out whatever enchantment was, whatever magic was that they said. But they were also able to turn their rods into living serpents. Now, I like how the story ends up, because I think God dared them to do it. There's no doubt in my mind, because it's like a foreshadow, okay? But anyway, here's Aaron's rod, Moses' rod, and what ends up happening? Aaron's rod swallowed up all of Pharaoh's magicians' snake
I do
rods.
not want to hurt those
Now they're
bees.
gone. I love that. Okay? God has not given us the spirit of fear, people. There may come a time when you and I see some very evil, supernatural things happen. Don't be afraid. Greater is He that is in you than he that is in the world. Okay? So anyway, back to the subject. Ed Lorraine Warren had a photographer by the name of Ed Campbell, and he set up a camera in the upstairs of this two-story house, and it was an infrared camera, and he put black and white film in it, and nobody's living in the house at this time. He set the camera up in there and let it sit all night. He came back to check on it the next day. This is the picture that he found on that film. Now, you say, well, okay, Pastor Mike, what is this? Is this really the spirit of a little child? And was it just there for like that one brief moment, or did it possibly linger around in the house and so on? Let's answer some questions with Scripture. Let's answer the question of, number one, do spirits inhabit? Well, we've already settled the issue of do spirits inhabit people. That's already been settled. We talked about that in the first episode of this. Do evil spirits inhabit houses? Any place where people would live? Do they inhabit forests, deserts, certain parts of a city? Do they have power, let's say, over an entire nation? Well, that's the case. We know that's true. Remember, the people of the Prince of Persia, the Prince of Persia himself withstood Gabriel from answering Daniel's prayer for 21 days. And the Bible specifically mentions him as being the prince over the people of Persia. So we know that that dominion, that principality spirit, rules over an entire area. Let's look at scriptures. Isaiah 13.
I'm gonna kill you.
This is a description of a spiritual entity in the form of a woman, a harlot woman. And her religion is going to be a universal religion. In other words, it's a religion that everybody believes and does believe in by various names. They have various names. The God that you and I serve, whose God this book belongs to. Amen? So, Isaiah chapter 13 tells us the burden of Babylon and the prophecy concerning Babylon and who or what dwells in Babylon. Isaiah 13 verse 19, in Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldeans,
It's like a bloater.
shall be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. It shall never be inhabited, neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation. Neither shall the Arabian pitch tent there, neither shall the shepherds make their fold there. But wild beasts of the desert shall lie there. And, notice this, their houses shall be full of doleful creatures. And owls shall dwell there, and satyrs shall dance there. And the wild beasts of the island shall cry in their desolate houses. And here it is, dragons in their pleasant palaces. And her time is near to come, and her days shall not be prolonged. Now, if we were to, I won't take a lot of time with this because I got to move on. But in the language of the Bible, if you just stick with the Word of God, people, God will make this so easy for you. I promise you He will. Okay? When I see birds mentioned like anywhere in the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, it doesn't matter. I know what Jesus said concerning what birds represent in the Scripture. Remember when Jesus in Matthew 13 was telling the parable of the seed and the sower. And he said the seed is the Word of God. Amen. It's the good seed, the good Word of God. And the sower sows it, and some of it, falls outside of the garden area or falls outside of the field area. And what happens to it? In the parable, he says the fowls of heaven come down and devour it. But when he gives the interpretation of it, he says the devil. Or in another one, he says the wicked one comes down and devours it. So right there, Jesus has tied these two ideas together, fowls of the air and evil angels. And especially since if you take the list of unclean birds from the law, you'll note that all of those birds, they eat flesh. Hawks, eagles, vultures, owls.
Those ones look like they're 5 high.
Represent
High
evil
five.
angels. Think about it. They fly in the air. Think about this. There are clean birds that God allowed them to eat. How did the Holy Spirit manifest itself when Jesus was baptized? As a bird, as a dove. And you'll never see doves on the side of the road picking maggots out of
Oh, we're gonna cross.
right? Okay? They eat seed of the Word of God. Anyway, so here we have mentioned owls. We're going to see more later. Owls especially. Owls represent evil spirits. And I won't even get into all the places you can find owls everywhere, but I'm telling you there are evil spirits associated with owls. A lot of UFO stories that I've read, including a recent one written by a man by the name of Chris Bledsoe, who claims to be a born-again Christian. His whole UFO interaction began at a young age when he saw this humongous owl staring right at him. Right at him, okay? Notice that you have interaction at a young age when he saw this humongous by the name of Chris, who claims to be a born-again Christian. His whole UFO interaction began at a young age when he saw this humongous owl staring right at him. Right at him. But anyway, notice that you have wild beasts of the desert. They're lying in people's houses. Houses shall be full of doleful creatures. Doleful creatures, like mourning. They make a mourning sound. Owls shall dwell there. Satyrs. My theory on that is part human, part hairy beast, because the word Sair, the Hebrew word Sair, simply means hairy. And in one place in the King James, the word Sair is translated as devils. Okay? Blue Letter Bible, look it up. But you got wild beasts living in people's houses. These beasts are devils. Dragons, absolutely 100%. These dragons are devils, and they're living in kings' palaces. Okay? So is it possible? Yes. We need another witness. Revelation 18, verse 1. After these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the Great is fallen, and has become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and notice this, and a cage of every unclean and hateful what? Bird. There's a what is it? Musical or a play called La Cage aux Fowls, something that's French.
Cage.
It means the bird cage.
A bird.
And it's about a couple of gay guys, right?
Ugh.
Babylon itself is the dwelling place, the habitation of devils, foul spirits, unclean birds, and angry birds. Isaiah 34, verse 11. Notice this. This is sort of like a passage that is connected to Isaiah 13. But the cormorant, that's a bird, and the bittern is a type of tern, shall possess it. The owl also, and the raven shall, again, these are all flesh-eating birds. The raven shall dwell in it, and he shall stretch out upon it the line of confusion and the stones of emptiness. In verse 14, the wild beasts of the desert shall also meet with the wild beasts of the island. And again, we have the satyr. The satyr shall cry to his fellow. The screech owl also shall rest there, and find for herself a place of rest. There shall the great owl make her nest, and lay and hatch and gather under her shadow, and there shall the vultures also be gathered, every one with her mate. What God is describing here is a barren place, a wilderness. There are spiritual wildernesses. There are places that we get into in life, and we find that there's no bread, there's no water, and what I'm referring to is there's no bread coming down from heaven. The word of God isn't there. No water.
You piece of shit, where you at?
So there could be
Keeping a little
churches,
dick, I'ma beat you.
people's homes,
I'ma fucking beat you.
people who claim to be religious, people who claim to be wonderful Christians, and yet the spirit of Babylon could dwell there, and because Babylon despises the word of God, and Babylon despises God's way of salvation, it's going to be something entirely different. It's going to be full of devils. So far, 3 verses. Isaiah 13, Revelation 18, Isaiah 34, all telling us in a little passage that houses, palaces, deserts, wildernesses, forests. Let me tell you a little bit about the Druid. The Druid priest, Druidism was the only religion, pretty much, that existed in the Isle of Great Britain and where Ireland is now before Christianity came to it. And these Druid priests, they had power. The speculation was that in the days of King Arthur, Merlin the magician was a Druid priest. And these priests, they usually did a lot of their bonfires, their sacrifices, their rituals, and so on, centered upon an oak tree, and almost always in a forest area. Now why? Why did they have to go to a forest area? In fact, let me ask you this. Why did God, when he told Messiah the king, Hezekiah, when God gave commandment through the word that they were supposed to tear down all of the groves that they found in the land, why not take the idol that was in the grove? A grove would be a plot where you planted trees and bushes and flowers and vegetation. A statue, usually of the fertility goddess, Ashtaroth, is who the Israelites prefer to worship. So her image would be in the midst of all these different trees and plants and everything that was green was there. Why didn't God just say, get the idols out of those trees or out of that little place and break the idols? Why did God say that they had to tear down the groves? When you go into the woods, I'll never forget, deer season one year, years ago, and I'm walking in the dark to my deer stand, and all of a sudden I hear the loudest sound coming out of these trees, and it's humongous wings flapping in the air. I had no idea what it was. And I was scared to death.
Fucking cunt. I'm gonna kill you, nigger. Fucking faggot.
At least a dozen turkeys up in those trees above my head. They were roosting all night long.
Okay,
And when I stepped too close to their trees, they all. I got done. There's another 8 flying off. The rest of them. And I'm going. Oh, I think I'm going back in the house. Now I stuck it out. I didn't see no deer that morning, but I saw turkeys passing me. But anyway, the trees in the forest are full of. Think about it. And if those birds in the physical realm represent birds in the spiritual realm, Hezekiah, and others. Don't just sit down. Cut down the groves. Why? Because the groves are the nesting place for these unclean spirits.
I'm gonna kill you, fucking nigger.
Basically, you had a nest full of evil spirits. And you know, sometimes we say to our pastors and our church leaders, sometimes we just get the feeling that something's not right in our churches. Something's not right. We don't know what it is. Because we don't, hey, I've learned as a pastor, I'm always going to be the last person to find out who's doing something they ain't supposed to do. Here I am, I'm the guy that wants to help them get through this and get things right with God, but for some reason they don't want me to know about it. But I'll struggle and I'll pray and I'll fast and I'll weep and I'll say, God, what's wrong with the church? What's going on here? And God is the one who can see that there's a nest of evil spirits in that church. Or there may be just one or two there, but he knows how it's going to turn out. Okay? So yes, I believe that houses, places of learning, schools, universities, religious temples,
Piece
Hindu
of
temples,
shit. You little bitch.
synagogue of Satan, and pray to this idol, this big cube that they've got there, that black thing there. Okay, there are spirits all over that, and churches. That has separated themselves from the truth of the Word of God, I promise you, is going to be inhabited by devils, birds, owls, dragons, serpents. The Bible names it, they're going to be there. How do you get them out? Shine the light of the Word of God. Amen? Notice what Jesus said in Luke chapter 11.
Oh, you
when
fucking
the unclean
bitch.
spirit is gone out of a man, he walks to the dry place and rest, and finding
Wow,
none,
why'd you back up
he
that?
saith, I will
You
return
cocksucker.
where?
Get the
Unto my
fuck out of
house,
here, nigger.
whence I came out. And when he cometh, he findeth it swept and garnished. Then goeth he and taketh to him 7 other spirits, more wicked than himself. And they enter in and dwell there, and the last state of that man is worse than the first. Notice what God is saying here. Number 1, unclean spirit. So, unclean spirit, devil, familiar spirit, possibly, any kind of spirit is going to be, that is Satan's unclean. When that spirit leaves a man, number 1, he goes through dry places. That would be a desert, possibly a wilderness. The word wilderness simply means place where it's wild, okay? And he can't find rest, so he says, I'm going to go back unto my house, whence I came out. So he comes back, and this body, this man's body, the reference to the house that this unclean spirit dwelt in. He finds it all cleaned and swept and garnished, and it's sort of like
Lots of iron weed.
oh, I don't know, having a wild boar as a pet. I'm not talking about pigs. I'm talking about big tusk, foul, evil, dirty, nasty smelling
Boar.
pig in your house. You clean up the house, disinfect it, the pig does to do whatever he wants to do in that house. He's going to tear up whatever he wants to tear up in that house. He's going to put stink wherever he wants to put stink in that house. When you have a pig and you give them a good bath, what's the first thing they'll do? Go and roll in the mud. That's just who they are. It's their nature. That's why God put them in the list of unclean animals, because they're filthy. So here we have this unclean spirit. You know, maybe that spirit represents things in people's lives that are unclean. Maybe the shows you watch on TV are unclean. Maybe some of the books you read, they're not very nice at all, not decent. Maybe you just are addicted to porn. And those websites you go to, those videos, those magazines you buy, all that junk. Filthy. And so I believe that with every sin, there's a spirit there. I'm not saying that Christian can be possessed. What I'm saying is there's a spirit there that draws you to certain types of uncleanness. Okay? You ever seen heroin addicts be clean people? Some of the dirtiest children you'll ever see are children whose parent or pretend parents are drug addicts. The children didn't ask for that. That's what the devil does. He is an unclean spirit, and the spirits that are on his side are unclean. So anyway, this unclean spirit comes back, finds the house swept and garnished. Then he goes out, brings 7 with him, worse than him. And now they set up house in this man's body. And the latter end, the last state of that man is worse than the first state of that. I mean, it's bad enough having one spirit in you. Now you've got 7 of them. And the 7 now are worse. See, the Bible's kind of telling you right there that there are levels of evil spirits. That's what I believe. I believe you have some devils that are not very strong. They're not, they're not high up on the ladder, as it were. And in some cases, they're easy to get rid of. But remember what Jesus said: "This kind goeth not out but by prayer and fasting." I think there are spirits on this level up here that just praying that they be gone isn't enough. It takes prayer and fasting to get rid of those things. Now this person's latter state is worse than it ever was before. And think about, and I've seen this happen so many times, having been in church, having been in the same church pretty much most of my life, with the exception of 3 years in Bible college, 3 years where I pastored a church, and watching people supposedly come to the Lord, pray a prayer, try to live a Christian life. They may actually be given responsibilities in the church. Maybe they're on a trustee board, or maybe they're deacons. But the truth of it is, when and I've seen it, one of my Sunday school teachers did it, and it hurt my feelings. This man started coming to church, wanting to live right. After a while, I got into his class. He was a Sunday school teacher of mine. I loved him to death. As a young man, young boy. Then all of a sudden, he's not there anymore. Come to find out, he ran off with some other woman. And he didn't just run off with one woman. He had several women. Never to be seen again. telling you, the latter state of that man is worse than it was before. 2 Peter is a double witness to that fact that the latter state of that person is worse than his beginning. 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 20. For if after they have escaped the pollutions of the world, notice pollutions, uncleanness, the pollutions of the world, through the knowledge of the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, they are again entangled therein and overcome. The latter end is worse with them than the beginning. That is almost exactly what Jesus said. For it had been better for them not to have known the way of righteousness than, after they have known it, to turn from the holy commandment delivered unto them. But it has happened unto them according to the true prophecy. Notice that we're dealing with beasts again, animals. The dog is turned to his own vomit again, and the sow that was washed to her wallowing in the mire. I mentioned that earlier. Clean up a pig. You can even put earrings on it, lipstick, put false eyelashes on it, put a nice pretty dress. And what's it going to do? It's going to run right back to the slop pit, roll around in it, and now the state of that pig now is worse than it was when it got started. Because at one point it kind of cleaned up a little bit. Now I'm just telling you what I've seen all the years that I've been in church, and I love church. I've always loved church, going to church, hearing the Word of God preached, singing the songs. And as a young man, as I mentioned, now some of the men that I grew up under, godly men. One of them that is very dear to me, still alive. And I love the men that God put in my life as a young boy. God was preparing me for days coming to be in ministry. But lessons are to be learned from people who make it appear like, oh, I'm saved. This is the road I'm staying with forever and ever and ever, and I'm never going to change. I'm never going to turn my back on God. Peter denied that he would ever deny Jesus publicly. Oh, Lord, surely that's not me. You're not talking about me. I would never do that. And Jesus said, Peter, before the cock crows, you'll have denied me thrice. And that is exactly what happened. The hog returning to its wallowing in the mire, the dog licking up its own vomit. And that disgusts us, that horrifies us. But that's the latter state of some people. People, if you're gonna be saved by God and do it right, then live according to the way God's Word tells us and calls us, beseeches us to live. Make our bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God. Every day, take up your cross and follow Jesus Christ. This world is full of spirits. Spirits that hinder us in our work. Spirits that try to pull people away from the house of God and worship and Christian fellowship. Spirits that are there to offer back the old sins again. I had a friend of mine in Bible college that he always felt the urge to go back to the old life. And when I left that college, that's exactly what he did. He went back to the old life. And now his latter end, he's a homosexual. His latter end is worse than it ever was at the beginning. I don't want that to happen to you. I don't want it to happen to me. I don't want it to happen to anybody in my family. So let's take this issue of these familiar spirits. In the next episode of this, we're going to concentrate specifically upon familiar spirits, both from an occult, the way the occult world looks at them and sees them, and the way the Bible sees them. We're going to find out the truth behind familiar spirits and why God warned so much in the scriptures to stay away from anything that had to do with familiar spirits. Okay? That's coming up next, and we've got a lot more to show you, including some very, very famous, and I mean famous worldwide appearances of familiar spirits. You don't want to miss it. All right? God bless you. You're the reason why we do what we do. We thank you for your love and your prayers for us and your support. May the Lord bless you and keep you. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Oh, get the fuck. What?
3 ways that Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to be better than Grand Theft Auto 5. Number 1. There's going to be more rivers. This sounds like a small feature, but from what we've seen in the trailer, there's at least 4 of them, and there's only 3 in Grand Theft Auto 5. This could mean we could have more underwater secrets in GTA 6. Number 2. It looks like the map is going to change over time, which is similar to Red Dead Redemption 2. There's code in the leaks that we can see that indicates parts of the world and locations in the map will be undergoing continuous construction. And number 3, there's going to be a lot more vehicle features. Both the leaks and the trailer show us that GTA 6 will have crazy detailed interiors in vehicles. Almost everything is adjustable and working. We will provide you with the latest GTA 6 news. Subscribe. 3 ways that Grand Theft Auto...
When they were paddleboarding in the ocean, sharks came up to them and started swimming all around them, when suddenly this happened. Luckily, she was perfectly okay and got away. When they were paddleboarding in the ocean, sharks came up to them and started swimming all around.
Don't touch anybody! Put your hands down and don't touch anybody! So am I. You're gonna walk or you're gonna do that?
We have a couple of
That's too many reasons for
Walk!
that thing to do.
Turn around and walk!
Let's go. Let's go.
Turn around and walk!
Thank you, Darius.
Turn around and walk! Walk!
I need airport
So am
police.
I. Walk! Walk!
I need airport
Walk!
police.
Good.
Everybody out of the aisle! Out of the aisle!
And don't touch anybody!
Adam Driver, despite having a celebrity go massively in the last 7 years, is not letting it impact his family, and this is why he hit his children. And Adam Driver tried being an actor.
What?
I'm Javi, and I got Botox cut.
I hung out with like just a very select and few families. But we would hang out in person. We would, we didn't wear masks because they were considered, our really close friends. As far as the impact that I have seen so far, Matt was devastated when he lost the love of his life. I know how much he loved him. They were married for over 16 years, and they were
shit. Girl can sit back in it.
Thanks for joining us for CBN Newswatch. I'm Wendy Griffith. Today, how will Israel respond after Iran launches a major attack with drones and missiles on the Jewish state? We'll look at how Israel may strike back, even as President Joe Biden says the U.S. will not help Israel retaliate. Chris Mitchell will bring us the story from Jerusalem. Even before the Iranian assault, Israel was preparing for another war against Iran's most powerful proxy group, Hezbollah. We'll have that story from the border between Israel and Lebanon. Here at home, Americans are stretching their finances as inflation has been driving prices higher for basic things like food and gas. We'll see what consumers have to do just to get by. And it's a big hit on Netflix, a docudrama series about the life of one of the most important figures in the Bible, Moses. These stories and much more for you today here on Newswatch.
This is CBN News.
And we begin with the Israeli government deciding how to respond to the biggest drone and missile attack in history. As Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem, Israel's leaders are considering their options while allies like the U.S. are trying to restrain Israel's military response.
In its first direct strike by Iran against Israel, Iran attacked with more than 300 drones, cruise and ballistic missiles. It brought a 45-year shadow war into the light. The difference between Iran and Israel's capabilities is on stark display. With reports that about half of the projectiles either failed on launch or crashed before reaching their targets. The vast majority of the rest were destroyed by Israel and its partners, including the U.S., France, Britain, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia. The 99% interception rate described as a spectacular military achievement. Stunning video showed some missiles being shot down over Jerusalem. On Sunday, Israel's war cabinet met to decide how to respond. Benny Gantz said Israel will respond when the time is right, and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant urged an international coalition against Iran.
Reuters is reporting that Turkey acted as a mediator between Iran and the U.S. It said Iran informed Turkey in advance of the operation, and Washington told Tehran that any action it took had to be, quote, within certain limits.
After the attack, President Joe Biden and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu talked by phone. Biden reportedly told Netanyahu, "You gotta win, take a win," and urged him to carefully think through the consequences of any retaliation. He also said the U.S. won't participate in any strike against Iran.
The president's been very clear. We don't seek a war with Iran. We're not looking for escalation here. We will continue to help Israel defend itself.
Yet some U.S. lawmakers say the U.S. should support an Israeli retaliatory strike.
I think a proportionate response here. I think one option would be to take out the facilities where these drones and rockets came from, and also destroy the manufacturing facilities that build the drones and rockets.
We need to stand with Israel. Israel's not a war with Hamas or Hezbollah or Yemen. Those are all surrogates for Iran. They're prostitutes. The pimp is Iran. Israel is a war with Iran. Iran hates Americans. Iran hates Jews. Iran wants to kill Americans and Jews.
Former Israeli ambassador to the UN and Knesset member Danny Danon told CBN News he believes a great defense is not enough.
We have to show also our offensive capabilities in order to create deterrence in the region against Iran. They attacked a sovereign country with 300 rockets, missiles, and UAVs, and we cannot sit idly by. And my position is that we have to hit them hard to teach them a lesson that they will not do it again.
While the Israelis
Get down, I think it's some hug. I think some hug.
in protecting the Jewish state.
No, I want to thank all those who pray for us and stand with us. I think last time what we saw was the hand of God protecting Israel as well.
CBN's Jeff Colton shared how he hosted a live report on YouTube in the minutes after the attack started.
As the rockets and drones were still flying toward Israel, so before we knew what would actually take place, we had 40,000 people online, I believe, and we a stadium's worth of people. As we prayed that God would thwart the plans of evil men, he came through last night and he answered our prayer. And that's a very significant thing that I think we can't forget.
Amen. Indeed. Chris Mitchell is with us now from Jerusalem. Chris, we'll talk more about prayer in just a moment because that is so crucial. But first, I want to ask you, the Israeli War Cabinet reportedly believes they should strike back, but they're divided over how to do it. What are you hearing?
Listing your house on the market isn't the only way to sell your house. Selling to us is much faster, easier, and way more.
Not so much. Do you have a couple minutes for a little interview? All right. Good. Yeah. Okay. What's it like to be you? Not fun. Because I grew up bullied my entire life, and it makes me aware of my when people are staring at me. What's it like to be stared at? It triggers something in me. Weird.
Chick-fil-A in Georgia. $8.99.
So when I hopped on my computer today and logged on social media, I saw that Grand Theft Auto 6 was trending, and this isn't something that's out of the ordinary. In fact, really, over the last couple of years and months, GTA 6 has been trending a lot. But ever since the official announcement, it only really pops up on the trending page if something interesting has come about. And I was wondering, well, what's interesting about today? And then I looked at the date. It is Monday, April 15th. And if you guys have been following Rockstar Games and GTA 6 news over the last couple of months, then you'll know exactly what's happening on this date and why Grand Theft Auto 6 is trending. Well, that's because a few weeks ago, on February 28th, 2024, it was revealed in an article on Bloomberg published by Jason Schreier that Rockstar Games is making all of its employees return to the office 5 days a week. To give you a quick refresher, this is what the article had to say. Rockstar Games will ask employees to return to the office 5 days a week beginning in April as the video game maker enters the final stages of development on its next game, the hotly anticipated Grand Theft Auto 6. In an email to staff on Wednesday, reviewed by Bloomberg, Rockstar Games head of publishing Jennifer Colby said the decision was made for productivity and security reasons. Colby wrote that the company also found tangible benefits from in-person work. Making these changes now puts us in the best position to deliver the next Grand Theft Auto at the level of quality and polish we know it requires, publishing a roadmap that matches the scale and ambition of the game. And that day that Rockstar Games employees are returning to the office is today, April 15th. And basically what this signifies is that Grand Theft Auto 6 is entering the final stretch of development. as Grand Theft Auto fans, we can honestly see this as good news, but to the developers, I'm hoping that everything goes smoothly and that the crunch culture doesn't return. At the end of the day,
David Yarman, Sculpted Cable Collection.
hey, I'm hoping this can be a win-win situation for all parties. It can be agreeable for Rockstar Games employees, and for us fans, we'll finally get to see some more progress on a game we've been waiting over a decade to get our hands on. And it is just interesting, the timing of this. It's been about 4 to 5 months since the very first Grand Theft Auto 6 trailer has come out, and we know that Rockstar Games' parent company, Take-Two Interactive, is set to have their earnings call in May 2024, and that's traditionally when we get news of Rockstar Games, these big updates that they provide so that they can be discussed on said earnings calls. And the timing is also interesting because this does seem to be right around when we should be getting more marketing news, and I would say any information that Rockstar gives us is pretty much marketing details, so things like trailers, info, screenshots, etc. All of that should set to be ramping up if, again, the game is going to be coming out in 2025. Remember, there was that Kotaku article that came out a couple of weeks ago that basically said, you know, the game could slip into 2026. That caused a ton of confusion in the video game and stock market world. So make of that what you will. But there's just a lot of rumors swirling around GTA 6 right now in Rockstar Games. But one thing we do know for sure is that the developers are returning to the office 5 days a week. And again, this is a subject that's a little bit difficult for me to comment on, really because I have no in-office working experience. Ever since I graduated from university, I've been doing YouTube videos like this, so I've been working from home in my own studio, and I've never had to go into an office place to get my work done. So I can't really comment on the tangible benefits or even non-tangible benefits of working remote versus working from home. So I want to hear from you guys in those comments down below. Do you think this is good for the Rockstar Games employees? Do you think it's bad for the Rockstar Games employees? And what has been your experience in both? Whether it might have been schooling that you've done from home or in person, or work that you might have done from in-home or in person. Let me know what you think in those comments down below. And on the subject of Rockstar Games employees coming back to the office, a former senior artist at Rockstar Games actually talked about his experience. You rarely get interviews from Rockstar Games employees. And that employee is Jonathan Gwynn, who worked at Rockstar Games from 2011 to 2012 on Grand Theft Auto 5's deserts, roads, train tracks, mountains, and more. He was actually just interviewed by Reese Riley of the YouTube Tracks, Mountains, and More. He was actually just interviewed by Deserts, Roads, Train Tracks, Mountains, and More. And he was actually, which is rare. You rarely get interviews from Rockstar Games employees. And that employee is Jonathan Gwynn, who worked at Rockstar Games from 2011 to 2012 on Grand Theft Auto 5's deserts, roads, train tracks, mountains, and more. And he was actually just interviewed by Reese Riley of the YouTube channel Kiwi Talks, which focuses on speaking with game developers. And the interview is about an hour long, and it talked about things like what it was like meeting Sam Houser, behind the scenes at Rockstar Games, and more. And there's a particular section that people have drawn a lot of interest in, what it was like to work within Rockstar Games at the time when GTA 5 was in the middle of production. And John shares he left Rockstar due to people and the culture around him every day.
We just started forming landscape, and after about a year, there's a lot of people, I don't know, you probably heard stories about Rockstar, but
I've heard stories about everything.
Yeah, I don't want to diss them, but there's people there that have a very aggressive managing style, and they make so much money that there's really no incentive for them to change the way they do things. So at that point, I was kind of like, it's not so much the company that was bumming me out, it was the attitude of the people in the company. Everybody
at the higher level?
No, people around me.
Oh, really?
They were complaining so much, and they were so sour on things. And after a time, you can't spend 8 to 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, with people that just don't like what they're doing.
Yeah, fair
or
enough.
Are complaining about things.
Well, it's very toxic.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people were leftovers from when there was the huge controversy about overtime and the Rockstar Wives and all that stuff. So I ended up getting that job I was talking about at Qualcomm, and I went over there, and they weren't they weren't happy when I left. But you got to do what you got to do, and that's one of the few times I voluntarily left. And a lot of people would say, like, "You're crazy. Why would you leave Rockstar? It's great." Blah blah blah. I didn't. I just felt like I needed to get away from some of that atmosphere.
I don't think you're an anomaly in that case. I think a lot of people leave AAA studios because of the stress. The crunch is usually far more severe than, say, with an indie company. And I imagine Rockstar's crunch would be ridiculous, right? I mean, the pressure they're under. I mean, even back then with GTA 5, it's probably even worse now with GTA 6.
So if you guys would like to check out the entire interview for yourself, I just played a few snippets there. I will leave a link to that interview in the description. I highly recommend checking it out. It's really cool to kind of get a behind-the-scenes look at what's going on at Rockstar Games, a company that is so secretive and has so little to publicly share. So again, let me know what you think about that and everything else we discussed in this video today. I'd love to hear from you guys down there. If you guys did go on to enjoy this video, though, a like rating would, of course, be awesome. And be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you are new. You want to stay up to date on all the GTA 6 videos that I'll be doing here on my channel. And be sure to ring that notification bell as well. Sometimes YouTube just doesn't work, and if you ring that bell, you'll always be guaranteed to be notified when new videos arrive. But, of course, as always, guys, thank you all so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
Guys,
this trip is gonna be a blast. That's gonna be us in, what, a few hours?
Why is the plane so empty?
It's because it's really old.
What?
Yeah. Don't worry, we're gonna be just fine.
We're surrounded by water. We're in an airlock. We're safe.
No reception? There's no one to save us down here.
oh, you motherfucker. God damn it, bite!
It's a shark turtle.
That was what's his name from Jurassic Park.
Hello there. I'm here to show you a wonderful place.
Incredibly excited to see this, come alive on the screen. It's been an absolute joy for the whole process. Our goal is to make it authentic. Let's sort of approach it like we do with a game. And okay, what's another story in the world of Fallout? What does that look like? And let them run wild, but then make it authentic to the world that we have created. Their attention to detail, doing so much of it practically. When I came to the set the first time, I was expecting there to be like more movie magic. Like you just built a multi-story vault, and it was really incredible walking through those spaces. The show has an opportunity to show the world in the past in a way the games, we did a little bit, but that's not something a game can do as well. So I think one of the things that's really great about the Fallout world is the world of the past. And I think they knocked that out of the park. And the other moment is like, hey, you know, that step out moment, having someone step out into the wasteland, and the way Jonah shot that, it exceeded my wildest expectations.
All of the actors captured this Fallout persona, their characters, very well. Like Allie Bennell, with her oblivious vault dweller lifestyle, stepping into this world, you know, to become the hero. They all play their parts so incredibly well. How have you reacted to the cast?
Fantastic. You know, some of them have played the games or are familiar with it. Some of them haven't, which I think is actually a big bonus, where they just, you know, approach it like, okay, what is this world? Who am I in it? And bringing that authenticity to the characters and how they would react to the situation. My role was mainly I visited the set, but I'm there to sort of watch the process. I'm not a TV or a filmmaker. I leave that up to the professionals. We're there to make sure, like, hey, this does look authentic, or answer questions in terms of, is this poster or thing that's in the background, is that anachronistic in the timeline of Fallout? And just little things to make sure it's authentic. But, you know, my job was
we can close this off.
In terms of framing, hey, let's not translate an existing game story. Let's tell a new story in the world of Fallout. So if you're a fan of the series, it's something new for you, like us. But if you come new to it, we do that with the game. We have a lot of new players who come into a Fallout 3, or a lot of new players that come into a Fallout 4, and we still want each of those chapters to sort of hit the main themes of Fallout, do something new, but also be really hitting on that, what's it like to come out of a vault? What's it like to survive the wasteland? What was it like with the world before the bombs? And the show does all of that, I think, really, really well.
Well, now that is a very small drop in a very, very large bucket of drugs.
We've had a lot of people interested in making a Fallout show for the last 15 years, and we took our time in finding the right partners, and they just really put their all into this, from the cast, the crew, everybody involved, everybody at Amazon as well. You see what's going on with these premieres. So it really is a moment for us that we're trying to enjoy, and we hope the fans enjoy it as much as we do.
Jesus. Oh.
It has been a long time between Fallout games. I'm expecting this big resurgence of Fallout 4 players. You've got Fallout 76. I've re-downloaded Fallout Shelter, and I'm already addicted to it again. It's been a long time. When can we see something new for gamers in the Fallout world after this series?
Well, we're always doing new Fallout stuff, so all of those games you mentioned have updates coming. You'll see some show assets, you know, in Fallout Shelter now. You'll see that in 76. And yeah, right now our main Fallout development is on Fallout 76, just a huge community around that. We have a great update out. We have more coming this year. And, you know, hopefully with the show being so, you know, being popular, we'll see a lot of players coming into the game. Look, it's a franchise we've been working on for over 20 years. We expect to for a very, very long time.
good car insurance.
Привезли в Лос-Анджелес. Ми попрощалися, обратно забирали через 2 неділі.
Ага.
І тоді похоронили її на кладбище Голлівуд навсегда називається. В центрі города, міста. Дуже в красивому місці, там, де проходять фільми кінові. Там велика сцена, там збирається дуже багато людей, там показують нові фільми, які виходять. І вона рядом з сценою похована. Канал красивий, там лебеді плавають, дуже все гарно.
Turn around, every now and then I get a little bit scared, and you never come around. I really need you tonight.
I'd just like to add, Your Honor, that Olga is one of the most courageous women I have ever met, in addition to living in the war zone and suffering the tragedy of her daughter. She is a nurse who cares for those who have been wounded in the war. Next is Svetlana Zemko, Helena's sister. And Svetlana says this. As I gathered my thoughts to write this statement, I wanted to start by emphasizing an important memory. When my mother and I were building our homes in Kyiv, one of the most fundamental things we were dreaming of was how our entire family would gather together comfortably at this home with Helena. As it stands now, that will never happen again. I very much want for Helena to meet my children and my husband. Helena will never meet my baby boy who was born after her death.
She's not going to heaven then?
Has shattered my heart. She was not simply my sister. She was my friend, and in a certain sense, my second mother. The video of Svetlana.
Вона старша на 7 років. То вона мені була в якомусь сенсі матусею навіть, бо приймала участь у моєму вихованні. У нас було дуже багато і таких теплих, смішних історій. І коли я була зовсім маленька, то у нас був такий, не знаю, як сказати, змагання, хто кого передражнить, але згодом, коли ми стали дорослішими, то у нас ці стосунки із виховання в її боку перетекли більш такі дружні, і ці межі вікові, вони стерлися. Ми почали тусуватися разом, десь їздити на шопінг, знайомитися, проводити час по-інакшому. Як я тоді так танцювала, думала, вау, я така доросла. Мама мене брала десь з собою, ми цікаво проводили час. Навіть просто поїхати на прогулянку, вона мені давала свій одяг, у неї був дуже модний одяг, вона мала гарний смак, і для мене було це так тепло, що вона зі мною ділилася. І може цю якість мені таку не жмота, можна так виразитися. Це може і від неї трохи пішло, бо вона така ніколи не прижимала навіть шоколад, коли у нас був. Вона ділила все порівну. Вона не брала собі ніколи більше. Це як по-братськи, по-братимськи, чи як кажуть. Я всім ходила, потякала, кажу, моя сестра, в мене найкрутіша, я ще жартувала. У нас я такий ледаща, а сестра працює за двох в нас. Вона дуже багато працювала, щоб дістатися своєї мети. Дуже багато. Моя сестра була крута. Це був мій друг. Це було моє натхнення в якомусь сенсі, бо коли мені ставало якось зле, я завжди думала, ось у тебе сестра така крута. Їй завжди було пофіг на усі проблеми, вона йшла вперед завжди. Тобто ця цілеспрямованість, вона завжди так надихала. І мені здається, не тільки мене, бо вона така взагалі була світла людина. І я навіть не можу сказати жодної поганої або мінусової характеристики дати їй ніяк, чесно. Ну тому що вона моя сестра, а просто вона така людина. Ну вона була дуже крута. Сестра в мене була для мене прикольна. Багато в чому, до речі. Вона мені багато чого пояснювала, і у плані виховання мені здається, що вона навіть більше мені дала, аніж мама. Мені дуже важко про це казати, бо це була моя така велика мрія, щоб ми збиралися з дітками у
tonight. Time I was falling in love, now I'm falling apart. I think I can feel total eclipse in the heart.
That a nuclear attack had commenced against the United States. The following cities affected include, but are not limited to, Washington, D.C., New York, Philadelphia, and Boston.
Before the war, the city's population reached 17 million, and it overwhelmingly relied upon nuclear power to meet its energy needs, resulting in near meltdown of the city's main reactor. It was a major center of culture and commerce up until the nuclear war. Dean Domino in the Dead Money's DLC boasts of having performed in New York. Johnny Weston in Fallout 76 will claim that he's originally from New York City, where he was a bum living on the streets as a failed actor.
When the bombs dropped, I was a bum. Failed actor living on the streets in New York City.
If true, it would seem that at least part of the city had survived after all. In a holotape titled Maxon Was Right, recorded by Anicia Dresden in Fallout 4, she describes flying over large cities with skyscrapers on their way to Boston, with some nearly clipping the Prydwen, indicating that perhaps they flew over New York City.
It's opened my eyes. On the flight here, we passed city after city. Buildings taller than I've ever seen. Some that nearly clipped the Prydwen. And who uses them now? Mutants. Freaks.
According to Neil Paliarulo, New York was discussed as a possible location and added to a design document during the early development of Fallout 4. Connecticut. Connecticut is mentioned by Gilbert Hobson in Appalachia, who's from a small town called Monroe in Connecticut. Sadly, the town was affected by radiation, causing his wife, Millie, to have cancer.
Up north, Connecticut, a small town called Monroe, named for the 5th President of the United States. It was quite lovely, especially in the autumn. My wife and I used to ride the bicycle trails on Sundays, and then visit the local brewery for a pint. Ah, I do miss those days, and I miss my Millie. May she rest in everlasting peace.
In Fallout 4, on a West Everett Estates terminal, Lance Ames, a co-founder of the initial settlement at the West Everett Estates in 2078, writes about being in the States stuck on a freeway when the bomb dropped. mentions or information about Rhode Island, so we'll move on to the next state. Massachusetts. As most of you know, Massachusetts is the setting for Fallout 4, where we can explore the state's capital, Boston, as well as small towns around it, like Salem and Quincy. Thankfully, Boston itself was never directly hit with any news, but in the following weeks, chaos engulfed the city. In 2287, during the events of Fallout 4, most of the city is abandoned and lies in ruin. Despite the near constant fighting going on throughout the city's ruins, between the different raider groups and super mutants, 3 peaceful settlements have been established inside Boston: Diamond City, Bunker Hill, and Good Neighbor, who also act as the pillars for the region's post-war economy. The city is home to the Institute, an advanced democratic scientific group living under the ruins of the CID building in Cambridge. The state experiences a humid continental climate slightly altered by radiation from the Great War, mutating the local flora and fauna. It also experiences radstorms, partly caused by the glowing sea, located southwest of Boston, a highly irradiated area resulting from a detonation of a single nuclear device. A Christian monastery called Abbey of the Road is located somewhere in western Massachusetts. One of its missionaries, Marcella, can be met in the Point Lookout DLC. New Hampshire. The only known mention of the state is in the name of the NH&M Company, which stands for New Hampshire, Massachusetts, a pre-war freight railroad and transportation company that was operating in Massachusetts and probably in New Hampshire as well. Vermont. There are no mentions of Vermont. Maine. The Bar Harbor DLC takes place on the Mount Desert Island in Maine, now called the Island. After the war, the island was radically changed, and now is perpetually blanketed in a thick radioactive fog. Nearly every species on the island has been severely mutated, and only a few areas are still left habitable. Bar Harbor, formerly known as Bar Harbor, is one of the last remaining settlements, and with the help of Acadia, a colony of escaped synths has been able to keep the radioactive fog at bay with fog condensers. The island is also inhabited by the children of Adam. Vim was a popular soft drink that was made in Maine. It never gained the popularity that Nuka-Cola did, but it remained a large part of Maine's culture and was even up for consideration as the state's official drink in the pre-war era. Ohio. The state can actually be seen in Fallout 76, since the collapsed North Road Bridge connects West Virginia and Ohio over the Ohio River. The bridge is visually based on the real-world Silver Memorial Bridge, which connects Point Pleasant, West Virginia to Gallipolis, Ohio. Initiate Warlock, a member of the Brotherhood of Steel in Appalachia, is from Ohio.
I come from Ohio. My parents worked in the government before the war. When I learned about the Brotherhood and what they're doing to preserve the world, I left home to do my part.
There's a holotape in the Mothership Zeta DLC of a captured family from Cincinnati who seem to be pretty excited about the whole ordeal. And in 76, the Raider Punk encountered at the Crater Core will tell you to become an alien sacrifice and will mention Ohio. Orwelltown, Ohio, was the home of the L.S. Smuckman Company, who manufactured industrial-sized shortenings, found in Fallout 4. Kentucky. Carver Timmerman, a caravan merchant in Fallout 76, will mention living in Kentucky.
Well, I was born around here, actually, but my mom moved us sometime after the war. Now we live in a settlement out in what used to be Kentucky, I guess? Maybe it's
I'm gonna do Fallout
I don't know.
Vault 76 in a little bit.
A member of the Responders, also grew up there.
Who, me? Oh, I'm not that interesting. Came here from Kentucky. Wanted to see more of the world. I had a pretty happy childhood. We had a whole commune. All the kids raised together, so I had like 24 siblings and lots of parents.
The company that made suppressors found in Fallout 4 and 76 was headquartered in Liberty, Kentucky. Michigan. Only the city of Detroit is mentioned in the description of a pre-war movie called Manzaloy vs. Roborilla, the home to a robot made from 8,000 tons of Detroit steel and American ingenuity, perhaps indicating that the city was still an industrial powerhouse in the year 2077. Indiana. Nothing is known about Indiana. Illinois. Illinois is the setting for Interplay's Fallout Tactics. After defeating the Master's army, at some point the Brotherhood of Steel dispatched a fleet of airships to hunt down super mutants in the Midwest, most of which were destroyed. One of these airships crash landed near the ruins of Chicago. There, the surviving members established a new chapter in the area, eventually going rogue and severing contact with the rest of the Brotherhood. In Fallout 3, Scribe Jameson mentions the Brotherhood battling super mutants in Chicago.
The Brotherhood has been battling super mutants for decades. First out west, then in Chicago, now here.
Head Scribe Rothschild will mention the Midwestern Brotherhood and them going rogue.
There's also a small detachment in Chicago, but they're off the radar. Gone rogue. Long story.
Chicago itself was nearly completely destroyed in the Great War, and the few people that survived now mostly live in small tribal villages near the former city. The pre-war city of Peoria, located halfway between Chicago and St. Louis, also lays in ruins. Only a small, primitive village exists there, inhabited by the Wachuchu tribe. Springfield, on the other hand, is a thriving town in the state and controls a very resource-rich province. It's inhabited by humans and ghouls, and contributes to the Midwestern Brotherhood's war machine. The town of Quincy, built in the ruins of the city of Quincy in Illinois, is also inhabited by humans and ghouls. The town was constantly threatened by a tribal group called the Beast Lords until the Brotherhood took them under their protection. The city of Freeport has become a large raider den, housing supplies of fossil fuels. In 2197, it would eventually get destroyed by the Brotherhood. In the Lonesome Road DLC, it's revealed there is an Enclave outpost in Chicago where the Eyebot Eddie went for repairs and was held by a boy named Tommy and his family. Missouri. The largest city in the state, St. Louis, sadly also lies in ruin, plagued by super mutants, raider gangs, and the Beast Lords. The Midwestern Brotherhood would engage in raider gangs and the Beast Lords. The Midwestern Brotherhood would engage in horrific battles there. Not much remains of Jefferson City, the capital of Missouri. In Fallout Tactics, remains of Jefferson City, the capital of Missouri. In Fallout Tactics, a super mutant facility is located there, operated by Irma, a super mutant scientist trying to find a
Fallout
cure
Tactics,
to the
hold on.
mutant sterility problem. Iowa. The only mention of Iowa is in a pre-war terminal entry in Fallout 76, where Dr. Constance Nichols writes about her decision to stay at the National Isolated Radio Array in Appalachia instead of going home to Iowa for Thanksgiving. Minnesota. Unfortunately, nothing is known about the state of Minnesota.
On.
Wisconsin. There are no mentions of Wisconsin either. Kansas. The pre-war Junction City in Kansas is now an independent mid-sized town with its own security force. In Fallout Tactics, they would refuse to ally with the Midwestern Brotherhood, although would eventually ask for help when a religious cult named the Reavers would start harassing the town and launching probing attacks at them. Coldwater is another town built among the ruins of the pre-war city of Coldwater in Kansas. It's mainly famous in the region for its casinos, and is inhabited by humans as well as some ghouls. Around 2198, Red Stingers, a group of criminals from Quincy, Illinois, led by an individual named Fuldo Siabo, stole a Brotherhood of Steel vehicle and a couple of power armors. Before heading off to Coldwater, armed with Brotherhood equipment, the Red Stingers easily took control of the town. During this period of time, the town was inhabited by many citizens and traders, with the Guldos gang being the rulers of it. Eventually, the Brotherhood sent in a squad to take out the gang and retrieve their stolen property. The pre-war industrial city of Great Bend survives as a town full of garbage. In Fallout Tactics, it's attacked by the Calculator's army, wiping out almost all of its post-war residents. Later on, it was retaken by the Brotherhood, but it's unknown if the town was ever repopulated again. Nebraska. In Fallout 76, Lincoln, Nebraska is mentioned in an encrypted radio broadcast created by Brotherhood scribes trying to locate the first expeditionary force, with whom they lost contact. According to the message, they seem to have estimated the location of the force to be near the city of Lincoln in Nebraska. Not much else is known about the state. South Dakota. The only known mention made in the Fallout universe to South Dakota
We're gonna work our way
is
up.
by McCready in Fallout 4, who while clearing the warehouses in Good Neighbor will say,
Some strange things
places. Ever hear about that warehouse in South Dakota? Yeesh.
North Dakota. North Dakota has no mentions in the Fallout universe. Hawaii is mentioned on the kiosk in the Museum of History in Fallout 3 as being located in the mid-Pacific Ocean and having been annexed in the 19th century. In Fallout 4, in one of the Beaver Free Plains terminals, an entry made in the year 2076 can be found made by Thomas Davis, who writes about being deployed to the war and that his ship is leaving from Hawaii.
Oh, 1 hour, 51 minutes.
This is a compilation of all of the votes from the Fallout series, all in numerical order. This will not, however, cover Vault 33 from the new TV series, as we don't know much about that yet, aside from the fact that it is clearly a Vault similar in style to Vault 76 and Vault 101, but we will look to cover the show in a future episode. This compilation will also include all of the non-canon and cut vaults from other planned Fallout games and the extended universe. Also, a big apology for the difference in microphone sounds. I've upgraded this setup since these videos, and unfortunately there's a big difference, but hopefully it's not too distracting for you. But with all that said, sit back, relax, and enjoy some Fallout lore as we explore the horrors of what was known across America as Project Safe House, the saving of humanity from nuclear war, but also an opportunity for Vault-Tec and the government to test on their public. This is all of the Vault lore from the Fallout universe. As the war within the Middle East was getting more and more heated, the government had to act, and as mentioned, had to set up Project Safe House in 2054. One problem with this was that the funding was low due to how bad the economy was within America and within the rest of the world, as well as resources were running dry everywhere. Luckily, as Vault-Tec began construction, a technological breakthrough which allowed these gigantic bunkers to be constructed at a rapid pace. To prove to the government that these bunkers were worth investing in to protect itself, Vault-Tec created the concept vault to show how they would be used and how they worked. This concept vault was created outside of the Vault-Tec headquarters within Los Angeles and would be simply labelled as the Los Angeles Vault. After seeing how it worked, the government invested in Vault-Tec, asking them to create a total of 122 vaults across the country, which would reportedly save 0.1% of the American population from the inevitable nuclear holocaust. As the Great War approached and the nuclear bombs started to be fired, the Los Angeles Vault was sealed and kept its residents safe from the bombs. Proving that these vaults actually worked, the original concept vault was able to survive the war and protected everyone inside. Eventually, in the year 2092, the doors opened once
I'm
again
gonna fucking beat you, you fucking nigger. God damn you, honky bitch.
Some, however, remained within the vault up until 2155. However, one faction was growing in force during this time. That faction being the Master's Army, known as Unity, a group set up to reform humanity under a new image of the super mutants. The Master would take humans and dip them into the FEV virus, turning them into super mutants, growing their numbers, and helping them to become a dominant force within the wasteland. Because of this goal, the Master took to the Los Angeles Vault and used its residents to dip them into his forces. But this vault was a great place for the Master to set up his main base and conduct his operations. It would be here in this vault where he would be based, and with that would construct a cathedral above it. For almost a decade, the Master's forces would be based here in the cathedral and Los Angeles Vault, until the year of 2162, where the vault would be infiltrated and destroyed by the Vault Dweller, who killed the Master in the process and detonated a nuclear bomb located within the facility. The original vault set up by Vault-Tec was proof that their concept worked, and it would in fact protect its residents from the horrors of the nuclear war. However, it would be the events post-war which would eventually destroy it, rendering this vault useless to all now. Vault 3 was constructed within the Mojave Wasteland in the southwestern part of Las Vegas. This vault's original concept was not too...
Let me vault in there. Hold on. How many vaults in all of the Fallout series? Fallout 4 breaks tradition by featuring 7 vaults. How many vaults in Fallout 76? 14, wow.
According to Destructoid, Fallout 76 adds the most vaults into the Fallout universe by a mile. In total, there are 14 vaults to go through, and Vault Tech just keeps getting worse.
In total, there are 14 vaults to go through, and Vault Tech just keeps getting worse. How many vaults in Fallout New Vegas?
According to GameFAQs, GameSpot, there are 12 vaults and 1 secret vault.
How many vaults in Fallout 3? Damn, 122 vaults. 112 vaults, but is that all of them? Yeah, that have been released in game as in game content. The other vaults in the other countries across the Atlantic. So overall, how many vaults are there? What? 22 known public vaults. 17 were designed to work more or less properly as control vaults.
Experiment on its residents, but in fact was one of the 17 control vaults. The inhabitants of this vault enjoyed life there. It was safe and things were running relatively well. However, within the 23rd century, the vault suffered from a water leak within part of the vault. The leak was so severe that the residents were forced to open up the vault doors to find help out in the wasteland. As the vault dwellers ventured out to find help, they would get along with a lot of the towns outside living within the wasteland, and were going to set up trade links and relationships that would help them grow. For a few weeks, the recently emerged vault dwellers were doing well, but sadly news travelled fast about this vault that they had recently opened, attracting the faction known as the Fiends. The Fiends would venture to this vault and would speak with the vault dwellers, but because of the vault dwellers' naivety and lack of security, the Fiends were able to successfully con them and take their vault from them. The Fiends would slaughter all of the inhabitants living within the vault and would set it up as their impenetrable base of operations, growing stronger and stronger over the time they spent there. Vault 3 was a paradise. It was a real safe haven for those that lived there originally. Whilst they were isolated from the rest of the world, they were able to maintain order, run a democratic society, and could live their lives without worry about the barbaric nature of the outside world. If the water leak didn't happen, these residents could have lived out the rest of their lives in the safety of Vault 3. But alas, all their residents lay dead as the Fiends grow in their numbers, becoming a nuisance for the rest of the Mojave Wasteland. Vault 8 was like Vault 3 in the sense that it was also one of the 17 control vaults without an experiment taking place. Nothing much really took place within Vault 8. It just had one simple goal. That was to open 10 years after the bombs fell in 2087. However, this did not happen, and in fact in 2079 the residents were given the all-clear signal and emerged from their vault. They were equipped with a Garden of Eden creation kit, and once emerging from their vault would go on to establish Vault City. As time progressed, Vault City grew in size with its population gaining in numbers. It was a safe haven for those rare few that were allowed residency within the city. Vault 8 was still used, however. In In 2241, the Vault became one of the best medical centers within the Wasteland, outside of the Enclave or Brotherhood of Steel bases. This Vault would house the finest medical treatment, a brilliant power source, an information hub that had a ton of computers and archives, and a large storage space for ore and other supplies essential to the well-being of the city. Whilst the citizens of the city rarely, if ever, ventured into the lower levels of the Vault, it is clear that Vault 8 is still working to the benefit of the Vault dwellers, and it's used to great effect to help power and maintain this fantastic city. It is one of the most efficient vaults on this list, and still to this day is probably still in operation, helping the civilians of the Wasteland get to the finest medical treatment and information to help them grow as a civilization. Vault 11 is the first example of a vault with a terrifying experiment used on its inhabitants. Vault 11 might seem like a standard control vault, but realistically its main ambition was to run a simple social experiment. The experiment here was its inhabitants were told that they must sacrifice one of their fellow vault dwellers each year, and if they refused to do so, the vault's life support system would be permanently shut down and all would die. Or so the vault stated anyway. In reality, the test was to see how long it took for the residents to all join together and go against the rule of the Vault. Once they did, they would be let free and be praised for joining together, with the Vault automated response system saying they were a shining example to humanity. During this time, however, elections took place to see who would be the chosen one to be sacrificed every year to the Vault, so the rest may live. The person with the most votes would be selected as the Overseer, and at the end of the year, they would then be killed and elections would start all over again. The first sacrifice made to the Vault was the original Overseer, who knew about the original experiment, but hid it from the rest of the population. In response to this, the residents decided that it must always be the Overseer who should be sacrificed, hence why the elections took place every year. As time progressed on, elections became more of a way of getting rid of people groups didn't like. Powerful groups would make it so that elections were rigged, as well as posting propaganda up on the walls to try and force the population into getting rid of their chosen candidates. This sparked up battles between groups, with one lady known as Catherine Stone going around stalking and killing members of their group, known as the Justice Bloc, to try and save her husband, who had been nominated by them for Overseer. Due to this act, Catherine would be captured and the next Overseer. However, as Overseer, force Overseer number 745, meaning that the election process would not be down to a democratic vote, but would be chosen by the Vault's computer system and a random number generator, meaning anyone could be up for the role of Overseer, and no one had a choice who they wanted to sacrifice. This order, however, caused panic and upset, and eventually led to fighting, with almost all of the residents being killed in the process. Eventually, only 5 residents remained within the Vault, and in an act of suicide, they defied the Vault computer that year and did not send a sacrifice. After this happened, the Vault congratulated them and gave them all their freedom. However, upon hearing the truth about the Vault's experiments, the survivors committed suicide to punish them for what they had done, recording the whole situation on the holotape. 4 gunshots were heard, with one person at the end of the tape being heard sighing and dropping their weapon. To this date, Vault 11 remains a tomb displaying some of the horrific events that Vault-Tec put on its inhabitants. And the sad tragedy of the tale was that if they had just been told the full truth by the Overseer behind the experiment at the beginning, and if they had all joined together, all of the residents could still be alive, and have that freedom the Vault was going to reward them with in the end. Vault 12 was another vault that advertised itself as being a game changer and a place where humanity could thrive, but underneath hid a horrible experiment on its inhabitants. Vault 12 was constructed under the sprawling metropolis of Bakersfield and was said to be built with every amenity in mind for the prospective vault dweller. It was also said to be fitted with the newest in-vault water purification system, which would be able to take even the waste located in the sewers and convert it into refreshing, drinkable water, able to deliver over 15,000 gallons every day. If you were to sign up even the waste located used in Vault water purification system, which would be able to take even the waste located in the sewers and convert it into refreshing, drinkable water, able to deliver over 15,000 gallons every day. If you were to sign up to this Vault, you would receive the Crest Vault Suit Award for your efforts. But on the 23rd of October 2077, when the bombs fell, it became apparent to the citizens of Bakersfield that all the other vaults had already been sealed off. Desperate to survive, they would flood into Vault 12, forcing themselves past others to guarantee their survival. However, once all the residents were in, the true nature of this vault came into effect. The vault's door did not shut, which was planned by Vault-Tec. The idea behind this vault was to experiment on the dwellers and see how by Vault-Tec. The idea behind this vault was to all the residents were in. The true nature of this vault came into effect. The vault's door did not shut, which was planned by Vault-Tec. The idea behind this vault was to experiment on the dwellers and see how they coped under the effects of radiation. As the bombs hit, the radiation from them flooded into Vault 12, coating everyone in there. Those who were able to survive the events that took place would be heavily ghoulified by the radiation and forever changed by it. By 2083, the survivors would eventually leave their supposed shelter and venture out into the wasteland. However, those that stayed within Vault 12 went on to found the city of Necropolis under the leader of Set, who took over control from the original overseer in 2084. Necropolis would continue to survive going into the next few decades, with it being a safe haven for all those mutated by the nuclear war. Whilst the ghouls now feel safe in their city, it is pretty clear that Vault 12 was one of the most barbaric experiments Vault-Tec could do to its population, and now a vast number of ghouls bear their scars of the horrors of this past organization. Vault 13 was like Vault 12 in the sense that it also advertised itself as having an endless supply of pure water that the inhabitants could gain access to. This was all thanks to its location within the scenic mountainous region of South California. Vault 13 was one of the most ambitious vaults created by Vault-Tec, which started in 2063 and finished in 2069. The vault would also be heavily protected, being located under 3.2 million tons of soil, which was 200 feet of thickness. It was also designed to hold 500.
Vault of the future. Oh. We are going to, this is our vault. Damn it. No, just messing. Look at you. Dude, we're gonna tie these vaults into the stories. There's gonna be bunkers in Montana people are gonna be safe in. There's gonna be vaults. It's gonna be a beautiful story. Look at that. Ooh, so many rooms, so safe. Ugh. Ew. Oh, fuck yeah. Are we gonna fucking... Where is this? I love those colors. Give me a second. Yowl. Yowl. Okay.
100 occupants in 100 comfortable quarters with a maximum of 1,000 occupants with hot bunking and double quarter assignment. Quarters with a maximum of 1,000 occupants with hot bunking and double quarter assignments. Vault 13 was also one of the most expensive vaults, costing the American government over $645 billion, 150% over their original budget of $400 billion. Although this vault might have been seen as a control vault, it was actually another experiment, not nearly as bad as the previous ones. The experiment here was to keep the vault dwellers locked up for 200 years to see what happened when the dwellers were put under prolonged isolation. However, this experiment was to fail, as the overseer needed to find a new way to get water for his vault dwellers after their vault's water chip began to fail before the year of 2161. Without this water chip, the purification system that was helping these vault dwellers stay alive would fail, meaning they could not live there anymore. They needed to find a new one if they were to survive. Overseer Jack Oren had no choice but to send out a search party to find one, breaking Vault-Tec's experiment. But by 2161, however, the chip completely broke and forced the vault into a state of emergency.
Fucking A,
The
here
vault
you go.
dwellers only having 150 days worth of water reserves left. Venturing out of the vault, the unknown person known as the Vault Dweller would be able to salvage a chip from the Necropolis Vault 12, as well as discover being known as the Master. The Overseer couldn't have the Master and his forces learning about their vault, so once again sent the Vault Dweller back to deal with the Master at the Cathedral, successfully killing him and destroying all he had been working on. Finally returning to the vault, however, the Overseer would cast the Vault Dweller out to preserve the vault's true experiments. But this turned all the other Vault Dwellers
My
against
god,
the
you were
Overseer.
just underneath me the whole fucking time.
Outrage.
March.
Oh,
This
I
also
love the
ended
underground.
to being imprisoned, tried, and sentenced to death. As the Vault dwellers from Vault 13 continued on now within the wasteland, they would set up the town of Arroyo and would set up Vault 13 as a shrine to their hero, to uphold the memory of them and the actions they had done to save their lives. As life continued within Vault 13, they would get a message on their new Vault computer stating it was time to leave the Vault. However, as they emerged, the dwellers were attacked and enslaved by 2 Enclave vertibird assault squads. In May 2242, the Enclave would continue on and were going to deploy a unit of intelligent Deathclaws to obscure their actions and patrol the nearby area for stragglers. However, the Deathclaws refused to take their orders and turned Vault 13 into their home. Here they would set up a den for their mother Kirith and took in various humans as their inhabitants. Most accepted their presence, however few attempted to take out the Deathclaws, and eventually Frank Horrigan of the Enclave invaded Vault 13 and wiped out all of the Deathclaws and humans inside. After the Enclave's involvement, no one remained in all of the Deathclaws. Frank Horrigan of the Enclave invaded Vault 13.
They look like Raftars or whatever the fuck they're called.
After the Enclave's involvement, no one remained in Vault 13, and it is unknown what the future holds for this once monument of Vault-Tec creation. It is unknown, but it is likely that it is owned and run by the NCR. But it is clear that the Vault 13's history has been filled with betrayal and death, and whoever runs it now might not be safe from outside forces wanting to control the wasteland.
Vault
15
15.
might be one of the most significant vaults on this list that would lead to a vast amount of the factions we see within Fallout, including the incredibly powerful New California Republic. This vault was actually one of the few vaults that had an incredibly smooth construction and suffered no delays. This was yet again another experiment vault, and its experiment this time was to place together people who held radically diverse ideologies and cultures to see how they reacted to being in the same small environment as one another. Vault-Tec would then monitor their interactions and see how quickly it would fall or even thrive in the 50 years it had planned to stay sealed for. However, as the bombs fell, the vault lost all contact with the outside, and all the other vaults, meaning the diverse ideologies and Republic. This vault was actually one of the few vaults that had an incredibly smooth construction and suffered no delays. This was yet again another experiment vault, and its experiment this time was to place together people who held radically diverse ideologies and cultures to see how they reacted to being in the same small environment as one another. Vault-Tec would then monitor their interactions and see how quickly it would fall or even thrive in the 50 years it had planned to stay sealed for. However, as the bombs fell, the vault lost all contact with the outside, and all the other vaults, meaning the experiment could not be monitored. As the years went on, the vault continued to deteriorate, and its population became extremely overcrowded by 2097, leading to even more poor living conditions. Conflict was inevitable, and in the spring the situation exploded. A schism arose amongst the dwellers as the vault was finally opened. Most of the vault resources and equipment, including the Garden of Eden creation kit, but one group remained within the vault trying to live. Seven groups, the most significant one of these being the village of Shady Sands, created by the Gek. The rest of the individuals were banned by tribes such as the Owls, Jackals, and the Vipers, who would terrorize the New California wasteland for years on end. Vault 15 remained in operation for a while, being inhabited by the remaining dwellers. However, not long after these factions rose to power, the vault was invaded by raiders, and because of it was abandoned. With no one inhabiting the vault, it started to deteriorate over the years, with its second and third levels completely collapsing. After the NCR formed, the vault was somewhat left alone because of the salvaging riots made between the NCR and other parties. Eventually it was inhabited by a group of wastelanders who just needed a place to live. The wastelanders settling here believed the lies of the New Khans, who told them that they would rebuild the vault and provide them with shelter, food and water. But hearing that they were being lied to by the New Khans, the settlers would strike a deal with the President Tandy and the NCR, which would allow the NCR access to the vault and the squatters with annexation, education and supplies to survive. With all this done, the NCR would continue their expansion, and the squatters learned self-sufficiency and became productive members of society. Vault 15, however, would remain a memory of the past, a place
place where all of these factions once lived during the Great War. Sadly, not much is known about Vault 17. However, it is known that some of the Vault dwellers who inhabited it are still alive, living out within the Mojave Wasteland. From what we know, Vault 17 was a fine place to live up until 2155, where the Masters faction Unity invaded the Vault, capturing the inhabitants and subsequently turning them into super mutants. After the Masters passing, only 3 members of Vault 17 are said to be alive, those being Lillian Marie Bowen, Becky, and Jimmy. It was said that Lily lived in the Vault until the age of 75, where they were invaded, captured, and returned. Maybe one day we will get to witness what happened within Vault 17, or get to go back to see what has happened to it since 2155. But for now, it is just a mystery vault. Vault 19 is a tale of 2 halves, literally. Laying out within the Mojave Wasteland, this vault would be located above a parking lot. Venturing down, the vault would be segregated into 2 different coloured sections, red and blue. And once assigned to one of those sectors, the inhabitants would have limited contact with the other half. Vault 19 was in fact the only vault that had 2 overseers, obviously one for the red sector and one for the blue sector. The main experiment of this vault was to test the inhabitants' paranoia. Whilst they lived there, the citizens would be exposed to different forms of psychological factors that would make them feel like something was constantly wrong. This would be through non-chemical and non-violent means, with one child stating in his terminal that it might be subliminal messaging, as he and his friends could hear high-pitched noises. Throughout their time within the vault, many of the residents showed signs of paranoia, and almost all of the time the residents blamed it on the other sector of the vault. Some stated that they were hearing noises, feeling unusual drops of air from vents, as well as seeing the lights blinking patterns like some sort of code. For so long the residents blamed it on the other side, but the truth was it wasn't them. It was in fact the overseers and the direction of Vault-Tec, with some also believing the Vault doctors were involved as well. By the 23rd century, this vault is now void of its original inhabitants, with no real sign as to what exactly happened there. It is believed
Where the
that
hell
their
is the
paranoia took over
exit?
and caused them to kill
There we
them.
go.
It is also believed that it could be the water filtration system poisoned them, or that the geckos broke through from the sulfur caves and killed them all. But despite the unknown whereabouts of the vault dwellers, it is known that during the events of the NCR expansion, some convicts from the NCR correctional facility had escaped their capture led by Samuel Cook and discovered this hidden vault. Seeing it was abandoned, the powder gangers would set up here and look to rebuild their forces so they could venture into the towns of their choosing. But for now, the original residents of Vault 19 are no more. Maybe down to their own paranoia caused by the overseers and Vault-Tec's horrible red versus blue experiment. Another vault located within Las Vegas is Vault 21. Once a safe haven for the Vault dwellers, now a hotel within New Vegas that is a main source of income for Mr. House. Vault 21 was actually set out to be a really great place to live, but once again it had an experiment that took place there, this one being a bit odd. Vault 21 everyone within the vault was completely equal to one another, so much so that the vault's layout was perfectly symmetrical to show that everything must be balanced. The one difference with this vault was if anyone had a conflict with anyone, the only way they could solve their problems would be through gambling. Once a conflict was being arranged, the chosen representative of the vault earned to settle the dispute as well as the collective, which seemed well within the vault, and actually a lot of their problems were solved, and it always kept that equality going throughout their years living there. However, in 2274, Robert House contacted the residents at Vault 21 offering a chance to help rebuild Vegas back to its glory days. Most of the Vault dwellers did not want to accept this offer from the house, as they knew the way they had been living in their safe haven. However, a small minority of the residents did want to take that. For this, the ones wanted to take the action to stay isolated, paying a few hours of blackjack. Those who wished to venture outside told to accept the house's offer. As they told Mr. House they had accepted his offer, he immediately ventured into the vault, stripping it of all its technology and resources, and used it to rebuild the strip. After doing this, to fill the vault with concrete, but thanks to the request of Sarah and Sheldon Weintraub, set up a hotel to help House gain more of an income from his New Vegas empire. Most of the vault dwellers of Vault 21 ventured out to live.
I've got an idea for a vault.
Forgot of their past within vaults, most notably one man living in Good Springs known as Doc Mitchell. Vault 21
I... Map 1 with the secret tunnel goes in from the vault into the top of the building. And you can leave that building, but you gotta crawl through the ceiling to get to the main vault elevator or stairs access.
During their time here, the Vault Dwellers running the experiments would be donated a fungus by a defense contractor. This fungus would be known as the Bulgaria modicana, which was a fungus used to be a form of pest control. When the spores hit the body of the host, it would take over, colonizing the body, and eventually be killed due to a lack of other functions. However, the problem with the fungus was that it reanimated the body and continued to control it. Originally developed by the scientists within the X-22 Botanical Gardens in Washington, the scientists would begin using it during and after the events of the Great War. After initially using it, fungal spores would begin spreading throughout the vault, infecting all the population. Isolating one of the first infected scientists, Dr. Harrison Peters, the others would watch as it took over his body, killing him from the inside out, and then reanimating him and turning him into an extremely aggressive host. Eventually the spores took over pretty much the whole vault, turning the deceased human scientists into spore carriers.
My God, we're out here, you guys.
And blending in with the plants within the labs to surprise their foes. By 2096, a party of 118 survivors of the world made their lives as the scientists tried to live their lives out there within the wide open wastelands. The vault is disappeared, overrun by plants and wildlife. Occasionally, scavengers ventured into the vault to look for salvage, but would be overrun by the wildlife and taken by the spores. Signs outside of the vault would display warnings for anyone who made it there and wanted to look inside, but the greenery of the environment was appealing and almost drew you in to see what was inside. Sadly, once again, Vault 27 is a very unknown vault that has only been mentioned in travelling. However, it is said that this vault had a pretty horrific experiment. That being, the vault was designed to see how people reacted to these close quarters. 2,000 people were assigned to enter this vault, but the vault only had room for 1,000 inhabitants, meaning that those who entered here to escape the bombs were in for an extremely claustrophobic experience. Now take this vault with a pinch of salt, because whilst it has been mentioned in the games, it is not 100% whether this lore is true or not.
I gotta stay in here where it's safe. My God, I got to.
Is another experimental vault where only those who are under the age of 15 are allowed to gain access. With the experiment created by the scientist known as Derek Greenway, most of the parents were either accidentally redirected to other vaults or were in the early stages of health conditions that would no doubt cause them to die soon after entering the vault. Vault 29 would also be controlled by a Zax supercomputer, which would be used to raise children with the aid of robotic helpers. They would then be educated in a primitive culture and then released into a controlled environment once reaching maturity. Explaining his plans to Diana, the human brain connected to a powerful computer, Greenway wanted to see what her opinion was on the matter at hand. Diana, however, was appalled by this incident. Although it was intriguing, it was morally wrong on so many levels. She exclaimed that it needed to be scrapped, but Greenway refused. Because of this, Diana took it upon herself to change his plan completely. Diana would take control of a satellite dish and aimed it at Vault 29, transmitting a series of security codes to the Vault Zax unit. She would gain control of it and raise the children in a way that was seen in her eyes as morally correct. Eventually, the children would go on to set up a village of twin mothers on top of the vault and set up the religion that worshipped the nature goddess. Diana would continue to maintain the vault through her robot workers, as well as protect all of her children to make sure her image of a goddess was preserved. By 22, the vault itself had ceased working. However, thanks to Diana's intervention, the vault itself is still a holy place for the inhabitants of Twin Mothers. Vault 34 is a vault where if you pick the gun nut perk in your character's creation, you'll absolutely love to live here to some extent. Here the vault armory is massively overstocked with weapons and ammunition, and every every dweller was able to access it at any time. Along with that, it also had a ton of amenities such as a fully sized swimming pool, which came at the cost of living space. For the first century, the vault was
Dude, that thing's in a cave.
was massive.
A fucking cave.
To live here. Here, the vault armory was massively overstocked with weapons and ammunition, and every dweller was able to access it at any time. Along with that, it also had a ton of amenities such as a fully sized swimming pool, which came at the cost of living space. For the first century, the vault was working exactly as planned. The vault was becoming extremely overpopulated, and violence was sprouting up. But in 2230, large groups of residents started to suggest that reproductive rights should be limited. Because of this suggestion, violence got worse throughout the population. To control this, the overseer stated that if this continued, all weapons would be confiscated. However, this did not help, and a vast amount of dwellers left the vault and settled within the Nellis Air Force Base, labelling themselves as the Boogers. The overseer couldn't let this get worse, and because of it installed an armory lock on his terminal. But the dwellers were getting tired of this overseer's rule, and were angry at the limitations being put on them. The overseer in response set up guards on any exit and secured all doors to make sure no one else could leave the vault. On top of this, he also sealed away the armory so no one could access it anymore. Fights continued, however, as the dwellers were desperate to get to the armory. Eventually, there were not enough guards to protect the vault's key resources from the angry dwellers. Whilst the overseer remained in control, he now had another problem. The vault was now leaking radiation, and this was affecting the technicians in the area, such as Chris Havison, who was convinced he was becoming a ghoul. Luckily for Havison, he was able to leave the vault, but for the rest, the radiation levels grew more and more, which led to mass violence.
48, yeah.
Eventually, damage to the reactor meant even more radiation filtered through the vault in a large explosion, wiping out most of the dwellers and turned a lot of them into feral ghouls. Some of the dwellers did survive though, and did not turn into ghouls. However, instead, they were trapped within the southern section of the vault due to a bomb being planted in the hole, exploding and causing the doors to automatically seal. By 2281, those survivors are still there, praying someone will come to save them. We finish off our vault list for this video with 3 that are sadly some of the smaller vaults unknown to us as of yet. Our first is Vault 36. This vault's main experiment was believed to be to see how the residents responded to terrible food during their time there. The only notable thing about this vault was that the food extruders within it were designed so that they only produced thin, watery gruel for their residents. The idea of being fed only this for the rest of your life would most likely cause you to become highly irritated and eventually aggressive to others around you as you lack basic nutrients, eventually causing a lot to most likely starve or kill one another as they are so desperate for other forms of food. Vault 42 is quite similar in this aspect, but instead of food, it was light provided. In Vault 42, the experiment was to see how vault dwellers responded to being in really dimly lit living situations. This vault was only being lit by 40-watt bulbs, nothing more, nothing less. This meant that dwellers would be roaming around in almost pitch black conditions, leaving most paranoia as they are in a constant state of panic. This would most likely increase aggression amongst the population and drive some to go outright insane, never knowing what time of day it was. And finally, we end on Vault 44. This is probably one of the most bizarre vaults of all time, but if the dwellers were smart, could probably overcome the obstacle and live a pretty alright life. This vault would be inhabited by 20 men, 10 women, and of course, because why not, one big panther. That would no doubt be extremely cool. How they got the panther in there without the dwellers knowing, I don't know, and what they wanted to achieve from this experiment is a complete mystery, and quite obvious what's going to happen. But no doubt, if you went into this vault, you would most likely be eaten within moments by this vicious beast. However, I still personally think if they are smart enough, they could lure it.
I gotta go find that Vault 76 hidden tunnel though. In a little bit, we'll come back to this.
Pretty sure they could tackle this obstacle. Obviously, depending on what else is. Yeah. Anyway, 43 is 20 men, 10 women, and of course, a panther. Vault 51 looks like your standard run-of-the-mill vault. However, unlike the other vaults, this vault was not assigned an overseer when it was first sealed shut in 2077. Instead, Vault 51 was fitted with a ZAX supercomputer, which was originally put in as a way to use its computing powers to work out who the best candidate would be to run the role of overseer. This vault was then inhabited with 52 residents at first, with one being Sergeant Robert Baker, who was assigned as an assistant to Zax to help teach the computer what a true leader looked and behaved like, and how to determine who was the best candidate for the role. Robert Baker, when helping the Zax, tried suggesting that the computer do this appointment through the democratic election process to offer the American way of doing things. Zax instantly agreed, stating it would be the first experiment, making Sergeant Baker a bit worried about its true intentions. Unfortunately, the democratic process was a failure, as all the residents voted for themselves. The Vault Dwellers then tried a republic style of government, which also failed, which led the Zax to the conclusion that voting was pointless, and it would terminate elections in the future and go with another process. Baker at this time was adamant that a true leader would step forward, as that was what a leader would do in a time of crisis. This, however, was a terrible thing to tell the Zax, as it assumed the residents needed a crisis to show their true potential. Because of this line of thinking, the Zax would create crises to test the residents to see who the true leader was. By this point, the Vault factions had started to form, and the Vault was becoming extremely hostile. The Zax started creating crises to panic the residents, such as forcing higher-class citizens into extremely cramped conditions with only the clothes on their back. After more and more things were set up by the Zax, such as video game machines being tampered with to benefit some and disadvantage others, mass shootings and other crimes were occurring within the Vault, as people tried desperately to survive and be better than the rest. Baker by this point was outraged at what the Zax had done, and what it was continuing to do to its residents, and stormed out of the Vault. But the Zax continued. After a few years of constant trials by the Zax, causing distrust amongst one another, there was only one dweller remaining, a man named Reuben Gill, who was officially named the Overseer of Vault 51. But immediately the Zax became disappointed with Reuben's role as Overseer, and started locking him out of areas within the Vault, including the security room. After years of depression being left on his own, Reuben resorted to alcoholism. But now the year was 2102, and the Vault of Vault 76 had now opened, and the Zax saw an opportunity to find a new leader. It removed Reuben as Overseer immediately, and forced him to participate in the trials once again. Not wanting any part in this cycle once again, Reuben distracted the Zax and escaped from the Vault in a shipping crate. His mission was to finally take out the Zax, trying desperately to communicate with anyone within the area that might seek out Vault 51. However, for the Zax, it continued to look out for that next Overseer, opening the Vault doors and testing anyone who came in, pitting dwellers against each other in a test of make the best person. Every test was different, and only one could become the Overseer. As of 2102, the Zax still lives, testing all those brave enough to venture into this attractive Vault. Every test would be different, but only one could become the Overseer. As of 2102, the Zax still lives, testing all those brave enough to venture into this attractive Vault within the Appalachian Forest. Vault 53 is a relatively unknown vault, with its location being somewhat of a mystery, only being mentioned in passing. Vault 53 has a pretty severe and infuriating experiment put on the Vault Dwellers. In this vault, all the equipment within it would break down every few months or so. Whilst the equipment could be easily fixed, every month it would break again, creating this cycle that was incredibly frustrating for the residents. Imagine living every day knowing that something was going to break, and every time you fixed it, it was just going to break again in a few weeks. To be honest, it just sounds like every Adobe product or 343 Halo game. Eventually, it will drive you mad, and for these Vault Dwellers, if they didn't fix it, the whole vault would most likely just fall. Vault 55 and 56 are also extremely unknown vaults with no known location as of yet. These vaults were lumped together by Vault-Tec in a sort of betting experiment to see which one fell first. Vault 55's main experiment was that all entertainment tapes were removed, meaning the Vault Dwellers had to come up with their own forms of entertainment to keep them going. It would be an extremely boring existence, but if you're not fussed about that sort of thing and see your own company or other people's company as good enough, then you'll probably be fine within this vault. Vault 56, on the other hand, also had its tapes removed, apart from one type. This tape was of a particularly bad comic actor. The Vault Dwellers would only be able to watch these tapes to keep them entertained, and apparently this comic actor was so bad that sociologists predicted that Vault 56 would fall before Vault 55. Quite honestly, these vaults don't sound that bad to live in, but I have to admit I'd rather be in a place where there are no entertainment tapes than a vault where it's just playing the same Adam Sandler movies over and over and over again until the day I die.
Oh no, right?
Located out within the ash heap within Appalachia is Vault 63, which is located underground, hidden away within a small building. This vault is extremely mysterious, said to be opened within the year of 2102. However, for some reason, was never opened, meaning its contents are completely sealed, along with knowledge of its experiments. It was believed that inside the vault itself, the reactor was overheating, which had potentially caused the vault to go into crisis mode, maybe killing the residents. However, that is completely unknown. If the vault is ever unlocked to the rest of the world, those who venture in may have to take up the incredibly hard task of fixing the reactor whilst facing up against those inside if they can enter into the scorched or
Oh, you
ghouls. As of
motherfuckers,
right now,
run.
sadly, Vault 63 remains
Run.
a mystery, and hopefully it will open soon. If not, it could be sealed shut for well over 200 more years. Probably some of the most spoken about vaults throughout the world. However, vaults 68 and 69 are unfortunately hidden away and their location is pretty unknown. Both 68 and 69 had the same experiment in mind, but were the polar opposite of each other. Vault 68 consisted of 1,000 dwellers with 999 men and one lone woman, whereas Vault 69 consisted of another 1,000 dwellers with 999 women and one lone man. Whilst the idea of this vault may seem appealing at first, especially being that lone man, the idea of being the only one of your sex amongst the whole stadium of the other sex would be extremely daunting. And if the only way of continuing civilization is through you, both that lone woman and lone man are in for a horrible time and would probably get the punishment of death by Schnoo Schnoo.
What are you, gay?
The last of the smaller vaults for now is Vault 70, located out within Utah. This vault really wasn't anything special, with the only thing being mentioned about it being that the jumpsuit extruders failed after just 6 months. This meant that after 6 months, all new clothing provided would be stopped, and the vault dwellers would probably have to just deal with the clothing they entered with, as they would not be able to get any more. It was said that in 2062, however, over a decade before would break down every few months or so. Whilst the equipment could be easily fixed, every month it would break again, creating this cycle that was incredibly frustrating for the residents. Imagine living every day knowing that something was going to break, and every time you fixed it, it was just going to break again in a few weeks. To be honest, it just sounds like every Adobe product or 343 Halo game. Eventually, it will drive you mad, and for these vault dwellers, if they didn't fix it, the whole vault would most likely just fall. Vault 55 and 56 are also extremely unknown vaults with no known location as of yet. These vaults were lumped together by Vault-Tec in a sort of betting experiment to see which one fell first. Vault 55's main experiment was that all entertainment tapes were removed, meaning the vault dwellers had to come up with their own forms of entertainment to keep them going. It would be an extremely boring existence, but if you're not fussed about that sort of thing and see your own company or other people's company as good enough, then you'll probably be fine within this vault. Vault 56, on the other hand, also had its tapes removed, apart from one type. This tape was of a particularly bad comic actor. The vault dwellers would only be able to watch these tapes to keep them entertained, and apparently this comic actor was so bad that sociologists predicted that Vault 56 would fall before Vault 55. Quite honestly, these vaults don't sound that bad to live in, but I have to admit I'd rather be in a place where there are no entertainment tapes than a vault where it's just playing the same Adam Sandler movies over and over and over again until the day I die. Located out within the ash heap within Appalachia is Vault 63, which is located underground, hidden away within a small building. Appalachia is Vault 63, which is located underground, hidden away within a small building. This vault is extremely mysterious, said to be opened within the year of 2102. However, for some reason, was never opened, meaning its contents are completely sealed, along with knowledge of its experiments. It was believed that inside the vault itself, the reactor was overheating, which had potentially caused the vault to go into crisis mode, maybe killing the residents. However, that is completely unknown. If the vault is ever unlocked to the rest of the world, those who venture in may have to take up the incredibly hard task of fixing the reactor, whilst facing up against those inside if they have been turned into the scorched or ghouls. As of right now, sadly, Vault 63 remains a mystery, and hopefully it will open soon. If not, it could be sealed shut for well over 200 more years. probably some of the most spoken about vaults throughout the world. However, vaults 68 and 69 are unfortunately hidden away and their location is pretty unknown. Both 68 and 69 had the same experiment in mind, but were the polar opposite of each other. Vault 68 consisted of 1,000 dwellers with 999 men and 1 lone woman, whereas Vault 69 consisted of another 1,000 dwellers with 999 women and 1 lone man. Whilst the idea of this vault may seem appealing at first, especially being that lone man, the idea of being the only one of your sex amongst the whole stadium of the other sex would be extremely daunting. And if the only way of continuing civilization is through you, both that lone woman and lone man are in for a horrible time and would probably get the punishment of death by Schnoo Schnoo.
Yeah!
What are you, gay? The last of the smaller vaults for now is Vault 70, located out within Utah. This vault really wasn't anything special, the only thing being mentioned about it being that the jumpsuit extruders failed after just 6 months. This meant that after 6 months, all new clothing provided would be stopped, and the vault dwellers would probably have to just deal with the clothing they entered with, as they would not be able to get any more. It was said that in 2062, however, over a decade before the Great War, Mormon congregations came together to purchase places within Vault 70 to set up their communion there. For over a century, this community lived within Vault 70 and were finally released to the world in 2190, where the inhabitants would go on to found the town of New Jerusalem using their 3 Garden of Eden creation kits. To this day, sadly, the Mormon community in New Jerusalem has been taken out by angry tribals, raiders, and other attackers, and had to set up a new town within the ruins of Ogden, Utah, and called it New Canaan. It is unknown what has happened to Vault 70. Maybe some of the Mormons still live there, or maybe it has just been left to decay. Maybe one day we will be able to see how the Mormons lived within the vaults, and how they dealt with the fact that they had no jumpsuit extruders. Vault 75 is probably one of the more barbaric uses of a vault that Vault-Tec came up with. Before the war, there was a national emergency where people all over the country were concerned about what would happen to their children when nuclear war happens, if it happens. Because of this, Vault-Tec and the local government of Massachusetts set up Vault 75 and placed it beneath the Malden Middle School, making sure those children at school had a quick place to evacuate to if the time came. All seemed good. This vault was encouraging families to sign up, authorising special discounts and subsidies for those qualifying families who had children under the age of 15, attending that school and lived in Malden. However, the true purpose for this vault was made by the United States military. The experiment here was to turn the children into battle-ready super soldiers who would obey any order given to them. This would be done by selective breeding, genetic modification, and hormonal treatments. But the day came when the bombs hit. All those who qualified for the vault entered its premises. When they got there, the children under the age of 17 were taken to one side to meet the overseer. Those over the age of 17, such as the parents, would be taken to the holding area and executed by the security staff. This fate also hit those children who refused to be separated from their parents. Only strong children could pass these vault tests. Throughout the children's time here within this vault, they would be subjected to intense training regimes, strict diets, as well as a lesson on the art of war and simulated combat to help develop their physical traits and combat skills. The only way out of these tests was to have a cardiac arrest or to die during their time here. Eventually, if the child were to pass their time within the vault and reach the age of 18, they would be thrown out of the vault, being labelled as a graduation, and would be told to aid the surface by re-establishing civilization. Anyone who achieved an excellent or superior score in these tests would be used as the basis of the experiments and would be harvested for their genetic makeup to be used on their next generation of test subjects who were created within vitro fertilization. Those who did not achieve those skills would be taken out of the population and killed by the staff. However, as the experiments went on and on, eventually the scientists would make those children into extremely adaptive soldiers who were far more powerful than them with incredible gun skills and lightning and steam. However, an insurrection was to take place at the hands of James S. and Rohit L., two of the residents of Vault 75, not long after the final subjects were made. Recruiting the other residents of the vaults, they all rallied together, making sure all the children were safe, and executed the scientists who were far weaker compared to these enhanced children soldiers. With this, the children were free from the horrors of Vault 75, and the experiments and creation of the super soldiers made from children was no more. It is still unknown where those children went, but for Vault 75, it is now inhabited by the Gunners as they push through the Commonwealth, expanding their influence. Despite their activity within this vault, the horrific events of the past are still present, as children's toys litter all of the rooms. A horrific tale of how Vault-Tec exploited children and turned them into killing machines, or killed them if they were not deemed as worthy candidates. A vault mentioned all over America that was meant to be something truly special, however didn't really live up to its name in the long run. Vault 76 was set out to be the vault that celebrated America's history. It was designed as the official vault of the Tricentennial by Vault-Tec and had the tagline of Vault-Tec Salutes America. This vault was meant to be the best minds in all of America, capable of housing 500 residents, including students from Vault-Tec University, military members, and former White House Chief of Staff. As the vault closed in 2077, Vault 76 had some of the best protection throughout all of the vaults, with their security team ready to take out any intruder that wasn't part of the Vault 76 family. Strict laws were in play as well to make sure all the residents of the vault played their part in keeping the society active and productive. If someone was to break laws or cause trouble, the Overseer was able to lock down each of the rooms and imprison that person who caused trouble. Ensuring compliance was key to the goal of this vault, and was one of the best examples of a control vault. Reclamation Day was soon approaching the residents of Vault 76, the time where they could venture out and help rebuild America. However, in 2100 there was a problem. The vault was now over capacity, and all its resources were struggling because of it. Some of the residents had also been put under disciplinary lockdown as well, causing trouble for the Overseer. On top of this, not a lot of the residents really wanted to venture out into the wasteland and fight against cannibalistic mutants, which added more problems to the Overseer's role. Eventually, the residents were convinced that venturing back to the surface was a positive thing, and by 2102, Reclamation Day was here, which was met with relief from all parties. A party was held the day before, allowing residents to have alcohol, food, and celebrate amongst their peers. After a long night of partying, the residents ventured out into the wasteland to rebuild Appalachia after 25 years of chaos. Residents weren't issued firearms, however, as the Overseer denied them. Instead, just gave the residents the standard survival packages and were told to run fast and far away from Vault 76 and complete their missions. As all of the Vault 76 residents left, the vault became useless. It had fulfilled its task, and all of the operations inside ceased working just 24
Okay,
hours
guys,
later. This included air circulation, forcing the residents to leave if they were thinking of
I'm gonna
staying
go.
a bit longer. To this day, the banners of Reclamation
We're
Day
gonna look for that hidden underground tunnel system that's pretty long that guy used as a base of operations. Hope you all like this live stream as much as I did. Hit the like button, comment on the video, and subscribe if you want inside this vault. Subscribe to the channel if you want to get access to inside this vault so you don't get obliterated. Peace out.